Chapter 731. The fire that burned Edmonton had already been extinguished, but it was difficult for the citizens to return to the city in a short period of time. Even if the resurrected enemy of doom had been repelled by Gouda and the long-toothed lion, Abro's side was still unable to determine the location where the M.A. Hammond's army first appeared. In other words, the city that was attacked by the M.A. Hammond's army was likely to be attacked again. Under this uncertain risk, Abro's emergency team, which was quickly established with Sure Meow as the core, quickly listed Edmonton as an unapproachable place. Under any circumstances, other than approved individuals and organizations, no one else was allowed to approach Edmonton. Of course, the revival of Hammonds had sent the entire Earth into a state of shock and panic. In addition to Abro, the rest of the economic circles not only took the initiative to contact Abro to try to obtain first-hand information about the M.A. Hammond's army from Abro, but also sent many people to the ancient battlefield hundreds of years ago to search, hoping to eliminate the possibility of the same risk in the shortest time possible. What's more, while sending people to search the ancient battlefield, they also sent an urgent inquiry to Lars Horn headquarters for necessary assistance. This was inevitable. Just like the M.A. invasion in Edmonton, if it weren't for the fact that the Iron Flower Regiment and Gallahorn were fighting on the outskirts of Edmonton, the city would have been turned into ruins the moment the M.A. army invaded. Less than 1 in 10 citizens would survive. Sure Meow put down the document in her hand, picked up the pen, and signed her name at the end of the content, then slowly exhaled. Although the disaster was temporarily over, the clean-up work made the old man who returned to Abro feel a little overwhelmed. Take it down. Next, I should have half an hour of rest, right? Sure Meow handed the document to the attendant next to her and asked softly. Yes. All the documents have been processed. Well, that's good. Come with me to see the situation of His Excellency. Yes. In this disaster, the benefactor who allowed the citizens of Edmonton, including Sure Meow, to successfully escape was now in a base 3 kilometers northeast of this temporary settlement. That was the base that Abro had specially allocated for the Iron Flower Regiment. Even though it was only a base that Lars Horn had once used and was abandoned due to funding issues. But for the Taihua Regiment it was a good place. Especially the huge Naku, which was big enough to accommodate many. Ms. Sure Meow wasn't the only one who wanted to go to the Taihua Regiment's encampment. When Sure Meow brought her men out of the temporary shelter, she discovered that Gudelia was already waiting for her. From the looks of it, they had been waiting for quite some time. Gudelia, let's go. As Gudelia boarded the vehicle, the motorcade escorted by the mobile engineer team sped towards the Iron Flower Regiment's base. In the base, Ray Minkai was standing in front of Gouda, fretting. There was no other reason. It was because at the end of the previous battle, the Black Bow Angel's attack dealt a very troublesome wound to Gouda. Just relying on the Radiant Bearer's nano repair machine to repair the damage, it was unlikely that it could be successfully repaired in a short period of time. Now, M.A. Hammond's retreat didn't mean that the rhythm of the revival of the adversity sacrifice was interrupted. The appearance of the pitch-black Bow Angel undoubtedly meant that the next battle of sacrificial disaster would be even more terrifying and terrifying. Kai. I'm afraid this body can't be used for the time being. The snow-white male lion slowly walked to Ray Minkai's side and sized up the damaged Free Gouda with him. Even though the Freedom Gundam's twin swords had been destroyed and its main body had been smashed into several buildings before finally coming to a stop, the arrow had ended in a tragic outcome. But the damage to the Free Gouda had become an indisputable fact. Yes. Let's not talk about the internal circuit and the various parts, but the outer armor can't be replaced. This is indeed a big problem. Originally, it was the easiest outer armor to replace, but it became one of the problems to repair the Free Gouda. The PS armor owned by the Free Gouda was a new type of technology that had never been seen before in this world. To replace the PS armor for the Free Gouda in this world was simply wishful thinking. Looks like it's my turn to fight. The snow-white male lion raised its right front paw and waved it towards the free Gouda, as if it wanted to take the baton from the free Gouda, and looked at Ray Minkai. Kai, I've almost digested the energy of that big rock. For the next battle, I can fight. After a pause, the snow-white male lion's eyes lit up with a fighting spirit. Let's not talk about that big bird. If I meet that black body again, I won't be afraid. Dark and swarthy, huh? State 0. That body's name is the Bow Angel. Do you still remember Invincible East? Ray Minkai shook his head and tried to guide the snow-white male lion to remember the venerable one called Invincible East that they had met before. Invincible East? The snow-white male lion frowned slightly and suddenly remembered the figure that was still fresh in its memory. In that meeting, it was still in the form of a white cat. When it saw Dongfang Booby, it immediately sensed the terrifying power hidden in that aged body. However, with a light flick, the white cat's attack, which looked petite and cute, was actually not inferior to a full-powered attack from an MS, that old man who doesn't look like a human? Could it be that the black body has something to do with him? The snow-white male lion's gaze moved up and down the terrifying wounds on the free Gao Da's body. As long as the energy supply was sufficient, the PS armor that could ignore most of the live ammunition attacks was now riddled with scars and could no longer bear the load. No matter where it was torn apart by scars, leaving only the black-gray body that was covered with shocking scars. Maybe it is. At that time, I learned about the other fragment from Invincible East. And this fragment is very likely to be on that black body. No, it should be in the hands of the pilot of that body. The snow-white male lion turned around and looked at Ray Minkai in surprise. Why don't I remember that old man mentioning that black body again? It was no wonder that the white cat, State 0, was even more surprised. When he met Invincible East back then, Invincible East did not mention any information about the Bow Angel. It was more about the pilot of the Bow Angel, Lamia Labrise. State 0, who had never seen or heard of the Bow Angel, naturally did not know the key point. Because, at that time, Invincible East did not mention anything about the body at all. He only mentioned Lamia Labrise. Lamia? Lamia Labrise? The snow-white male lion was stunned and recalled Invincible East's hateful and regretful expression when he mentioned the name Lamia Labrise. Yes. The person who piloted that black Bow Angel in front of us, I'm afraid it was her. Lamia Labrise. There are actually such twists and turns. Although it was somewhat hard to believe that there could be such a coincidence in this world, after being stunned, the snow-white male lion also accepted the fact in front of him. Then what should we do? Find a way to repair Free Gouda? Or? The snow-white male lion's eyes were already filled with burning fighting spirit. Free Gouda can no longer be repaired in a short period of time, right? In Neku, which accommodated Free Gouda, Ray Minkai's lamenting sigh could be heard. Under the blue sky, above the boundless ocean, a helicopter quickly flew across the ocean and headed towards a certain coordinate in the depths of the ocean, slowly approaching the destination of this trip, Lars Horn's headquarters. We are back. Kalta. In the rear cabin of the helicopter, Galio looked at the woman sitting opposite him with a complicated expression. Ever since they met again, Galio felt that the woman was both familiar and unfamiliar. The familiar one was the woman named Kalta Ishio. The unfamiliar one was the woman named Kalta Ishio. And I hope the elders can believe our words. Compared to Galio, who had a complicated expression, Kalta's gaze had been fixed on the battlefield, as well as Lars Horn's headquarters, which would affect the future direction. They will believe it. Father has already sent the conclusive news. Galio hurriedly said. He was in a hurry like a child who was asking for credit. Kalta slowly retracted her gaze from Lars Horn's headquarters in the distance and looked at the man sitting opposite her. Her smooth and delicate face, which was not covered with any rouge or other cosmetics that women liked, faintly glowed. Galio, You and I both know that relying on the power of the Bardawin family alone is not enough to resist the invasion of the ancient enemy that revived from the Calamity Sacrificial War. Now, it is no longer the Calamity Sacrificial War era of 300 years ago, when humanity was at a critical moment of life and death. Kalta's words made Galio pause. Yes, he understood. Although Lars Horn still had the mission of protecting humanity, eliminating all battles, and preventing human society from being destroyed by war, in fact, not many people would face and carry out this mission. Even if there were, they would just pull up this almost forgotten flag to obtain the benefits they wanted. Therefore, Galio was silent. It wasn't until the helicopter landed on the helipad of Lars Horn's headquarters that the silence was dispelled when the two saw the familiar figure. "Welcome back, my dear friends." Against the strong wind caused by the landing of the helicopter, the tall blond man stood motionless in the same place, waiting for Galio and Kalta to appear. "Machillis, are you hurt? Sorry, I let you face that terrifying opponent alone." When Galio saw that Machillis didn't seem to be injured at all, he didn't wait for the helicopter to stop and directly jumped down and ran to Machillis. "Galio, although I am happy to meet you, you should at least pay attention to your safety. This doesn't suit your identity as the heir of the Bardawin family, one of the 7-star families." To Galio's surprise, not only did Kalta's appearance change, but even Machillis seemed to have become a little unfamiliar to him. "Agent Major McGillis?" Galio frowned slightly. "Machillis, long time no see. It seems that something happened here that I don't know about." Kalta, who walked down from the helicopter, was much calmer. She only glanced at McGillis and nodded faintly, which was considered a greeting to McGillis. There was no obvious emotional fluctuation like when she interacted with Machillis before. This time, it was McGillis who was surprised. But he didn't care. Machillis just smiled faintly. "It seems that the accident this time has caused some changes in you. All in all, it is a good thing, isn't it, Kalta?" "Maybe it is." Kalta didn't want to continue Machillis' words. She shifted her gaze and looked around at the situation around her. Then, she noticed a hint of something. "Special Agent McGillis, Major. What happened here? There are too few people." McGillis chuckled softly at Kalta's question. "It's nothing special. It's just that the headquarters is making the final conclusion." "Final conclusion? Is it about the resurrection of the Doom ritual?" Galio asked as he came back to his senses. "Yes and no." Machillis' smile became more mysterious, but he didn't keep it mysterious. Or rather, he had been waiting for Galio and Kalta to ask about Lars Horn's strange behavior. "Galio, Kalta. The resurrection of the Doom ritual this time isn't an ancient enemy that has been asleep for hundreds of years. It is man-made." "What?" the two exclaimed in unison, as if they couldn't accept Machillis' words. "This was once an unbelievable conclusion for me, but it is the truth. Now, the leaders of the 7 Stars family that controls Lars Horn have gathered in the meeting hall to judge the sinner that caused the resurrection of the ancient enemy of Doom ritual." Machillis' surprise came one after another, catching Galio and Kalta off guard. "Wait, Agent McGillis, Major. Now, the culprit that caused the resurrection of the enemy of Doom ritual has been caught?" Kalta finally couldn't keep her calm and quickly asked. "Yes," Kalta issued. "Speaking of which, the culprit is also related to you." Machillis paused for a moment, then continued. "Of course, the culprit is also related to me. Because the culprit is my father, and also your guardian, Isnario Farid." Chapter 732. Isnario Farid. Do you know your crime? A stern voice of reproach reverberated in the spacious meeting hall. Amidst this voice, the insignia of the 7-star families swayed slightly, as if responding to the stern voice that reverberated in the meeting hall. Beneath the flags, apart from the empty seat beneath the golden wolf flag that represented the Farid family, the other 6 flags were filled with the 6 leaders of the 7-star families. They had gathered here for no other reason. It was all for the sake of investigating whether or not the sudden revival of disaster sacrifice was caused by someone else. Moreover, the person who had caused all this to happen was the head of one of the 7 stars families, the Farid family, Isnario Farid. In the hundreds of years since the end of the calamity sacrifice, the 7-star families had been fighting openly and covertly over the authority of Lars Horn and the 7-star families. However, none of this needed to be said. No matter who it was, they had all wisely set a bottom line that everyone tacitly understood. Now, this boundary seemed to have been breached. However, the culprit who caused all of this turned a blind eye to the pressure from the 6 lords. He stood there calmly, looking at the 6 lords led by Duke Bakurin. So what if it is? So what if it isn't? Duke Bakurin. Does all of this surprise you and everyone else? Isnario Farid revealed a faint smile, completely unconcerned about the situation he was in. If it really was you who caused the revival of the calamity sacrifice, then you are the sinner of the 7-star families, Lars Horn, and even humanity. As the leader of the Farid family, one of the 7-star families, the descendant of the hero who ended the calamity sacrifice, you actually committed such a heinous crime. Duke Bakurin's voice rumbled like thunder in the meeting hall. That voice was so loud that it hurt one's ears. It was hard to believe that Duke Bakurin was an old man with white hair. Crime? Duke Bakurin. I don't think this is a crime. A wise man submits to circumstances. The times have changed. Duke Bagulin, as well as the leaders of the 7 Stars clans. Isnario Farid chuckled softly. He was not afraid of Duke Bagurin's reproach, nor was he afraid of the blame he would receive if he admitted that he was the culprit behind the revival of the ritual. Lord Farid, are you admitting that you are the culprit behind the revival of Doom sacrifice? Seated to the right of Duke Bagurin was a middle-aged man with a large beard. A sharp glint flashed through his eyes as he stared intently at Isnario Farid. Didn't I tell you? So what if he was? So what if he wasn't? Prince Arion, you, who I've always regarded as my opponent, won't still persist in such a boring topic? Isnario Farid sneered as he faced his greatest opponent, Lestar Elion. At this moment, Isnario Farid's performance finally made the 6 leaders of the 7-star clans realize the truth. Everyone. It seems that our 7 stars clans have become fewer in number. Duke Zongong of Bakar Orchid had a dark expression on his face as he slowly said these words. Wait. Duke Bagulin. Isnario Farid's actions are personal and have nothing to do with Mechilus Farid. Moreover, we were able to discover Isnario Farid's crimes thanks to Mechilus Farid's righteous actions. As soon as he heard Duke Bagulin's suggestion to revoke the Farid family's honor, family head Badwin was the first to speak up. Mechilus, is it? Fine, then. Duke Bagulin frowned. Duke Bakurin frowned, but before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Isnario Farid's sudden laughter. Ha 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 ha. Ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. I thought that I would see something different happen when I walked right into the trap, but the result is still the same. Lars Horn is already dead. No matter what happens in the outside world, Lars Horn will still follow in his rotten footstep. How ridiculous. Isnario Farid. What nonsense are you spouting? Since you've already confessed, you should obediently accept your trial. The youth who had just taken over the Kazan family as the head of the 7 Stars family, Iagu Kazan, finally couldn't hold himself back any longer. He pointed at Isnario Farid and cursed. However, ordinary people might fear Kazan's name, but Isnario Farid was not intimidated by Iagu Kazan, who was still young and immature, and who still had the indiscriminate attitude of a young man who was obsessed with what he believed to be the right thing to do. Since when is it the turn of a dog who only knows how to wag its tail at Arion to bark here? You, Isnario Farid! You dare to insult the name of Kazan. As expected, Isnario Farid only needed to provoke the young Kazan a little, and he immediately flew into a rage. He wanted to jump down and teach this sinner a lesson. Calm down, Iagu. Fortunately, Lestar Arion, who was sitting next to him, stopped him. Iagu, it's not your turn to speak. Isn't that right? Isnario. The first half of Lester's sentence was to appease Iagu, but the second half was directed at someone behind Isnario. My good son. So it was you who leaked it? Isnario snorted coldly. He didn't even turn his head. He knew that the person who had leaked his secret had already arrived at the conference hall. Yes, Brigadier General Farid. As a soldier of Lars Horn, it is his duty to protect the citizens. Brigadier General Farid's actions are undoubtedly trampling on Lars Horn's mission and the glory of the Seven Stars family. MacGillis's determined voice came from behind Isnario Farid, echoing in the air above the assembly hall. In order to prevent Brigadier General Farid's crimes from worsening, and in order to make my beloved father turn back, I don't hesitate to cast a shadow over Farid's name to prevent my father from continuing down the wrong path. Hearing MacGillis' words, the cold smile on Isnario's lips deepened, and his demonic charm grew. That sounds very much like it, Farid's son. But can you really hold on to Farid's name? MacGillis, my beloved little lamb. Boom. Just as Isnario finished speaking, a thunderous boom suddenly assaulted the conference hall. The moment the rumbling roar reverberated above the assembly hall, a large piece of the ceiling wreckage smashed down without warning. Amidst the billowing dust, the broken pieces of the ceiling smashed down the 7 flags in the meeting hall, and even enveloped the leaders of the 6 Seven Stars clans. Lord Arion! In the midst of the sudden accident, Iagu reacted immediately and subconsciously pounced on Arion, who was beside him. Father! Dodge! On the other side, Galio, who had come with MacGillis but hadn't said anything, also rushed to the flag and threw Bardawin to the ground to protect him. Apart from that, the other 3 leaders were either rolling on the ground or watching the ceiling debris come crashing down, plunging them into endless darkness. Duke Bakurin! Kalta was half a step too slow and was about to take a step forward when MacGillis pulled him back. Kalta! Don't go. It's too late. MacGillis glanced at the flag that had already fallen, and then looked at the place covered in dust. Isnario Farid wasn't covered by the debris of the ceiling. Crack! At this moment, a soft sound came from the broken ceiling. It was a long mechanical arm. The mechanical arm extended down from the hole in the ceiling and reached Isnario Farid's position. Not good. Isnario is about to escape. MacGillis' gaze flickered as he subconsciously took out a pistol from his waist and raised it to shoot. Ha 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 ha. MacGillis, if you want to shoot, go ahead. Now, the name of Farid will belong to you. But as he watched the man being grabbed by the mechanical arm and brought to the ceiling, MacGillis didn't shoot. He only silently watched as he left, until Iagu Kazan screamed, "No! Lord Arion! Wake up!" Not good. Duke Bakurin. As soon as he heard Iagu Kazan's scream, Kalta ignored the still tumbling sand and the danger of the debris of the ceiling that could fall again at any time. He rushed over to Iagu Kazan. Then, Kalta's panic-filled voice came. MacGillis, Galio, come over quickly. Duke Bakurin is dead. Perhaps no one in Lars Horn had expected such a dramatic turn of events. The speed of the change was beyond the common sense of most people. Firstly, Isnario Farid, the leader of the Farid family, one of the 7-star families that ended the War of Calamity, was actually the main culprit behind the revival of modern Calamity sacrifice. Secondly, as Farid's successor, MacGillis Farid placed righteousness before family and took the initiative to expose Isnario Farid's scheme to Lars Horn's headquarters. In the end, when the leaders of the 7-star families who controlled Gjallarhorn tried to interrogate Isnario Farid, their scheme was exposed, and the enraged Isnario Farid decided to kill him. He killed the oldest member of the 7-star families, Duke Bagulan Zan, and injured Lestar Elian and Duke Fok Farid. Only Iagu Kazan, who had just taken over Kazan's authority, and the surviving Badwin and his son, Karta Yetu, who had been rescued, and Magillas Farid, who had placed righteousness before family, were left to clean up the mess. Even though Duke Bakurin, who had reacted, immediately sealed the news. However, the glaring hole in the roof of Gjallarhorn's headquarters was undeniable proof. Coupled with the mysterious body that had appeared out of nowhere and taken Isnario Farid away, the rumors of the leaders of the 7 Stars families being attacked soon spread throughout Earth. This is troublesome. Galio Magillas. I didn't expect the situation to turn out like this. Now the entire headquarters is lacking in manpower, and even the people are starting to feel uneasy. Duke Bakurin, who couldn't wash away the fear he felt after almost stepping into Duke Bakurin's shoes, let out a long sigh. In front of him stood the son and future son-in-law that he was most satisfied with. Father, could it be that even you can't calm everyone? Galio hesitated for a moment before asking. Duke Bakurin shook his head and sighed. The other families are still fine. But it's hard for me to speak to the Farid family and the Bakurin family. Magillas, you know the reason. Now, Duke Bakurin pointed the spearhead at the silent Magillas. Even Galio knew that Duke Bakurin was forcing Magillas to make a decision. Either use this opportunity to seize Farid's name, or completely cut ties with Farid and become a member of the Bakurin family. Choose. Actually, Magillas had already made his choice. He wanted both. I understand, Father. Now I'll go and calm the Farid family, and give the Bakurin family justice in Farid's name. Looking at Magillas's unwavering back, Duke Bakurin suddenly felt as if he couldn't see through the son-in-law he had personally chosen. His ambition, it seemed to be very big. So big that he couldn't see it clearly. Galio, help me send a message to Kalta Issue. The most important thing now is to integrate the Earth's outer orbit command fleet as soon as possible. Isnario Farid will probably launch another attack very soon. Yes, Father. Galio paused, somewhat hesitant. Galio, is there anything else? Yes. Before coming here, Magillas mentioned to me that Iagu Kazan's side seems to be a little unstable. Iagu Kazan? At the mention of this overly young Duke Kazan, Duke Bakurin's head hurt even more, but there was nothing he could do. Forget it. Let him be. Right now, our mission is to stabilize the situation as soon as possible. As for Duke Kazan, let's see what he chooses. Galio opened his mouth, but in the end, he remained silent. His father's reaction was just as Magillas had said to him in private. Right now, among Lars Horn, there was probably no one who could control Iagu Kazan. The one who could control this mad dog, Lestar Elian, was unfortunately injured and unconscious. He was lying in the hospital, and it was unknown when he would wake up. In other words, in the current situation, apart from Isnario Farid, the biggest variable was Iagu Kazan, this dog who might become even crazier because of his master's injury. Chapter 733. He was all alone. Now, Magillas was facing the censure of the Baguranzan family by himself. There was no other reason. It was because of Isnario Farid's sudden attack, which led to the death of Duke Baguranzan, the oldest man in the family along with Lars Horn. 4 decades, Duke Baguranzan had brought unparalleled glory and wealth to the family, but with the death of Duke Baguranzan, the family fell into a fearful countdown. As a member of a 7-star family, even a hedonistic son of a rich family who was waiting to die knew that when the family leader died, the family would fall into turmoil. From that moment on, whether it was the family itself or the other 7-star families, they would all have thoughts about the family that had lost their family leader. Therefore, in order to protect themselves and to gain more benefits, McGillis, the son of Isnario Farid, naturally became their target. From the moment McGillis appeared at the gate of the Baguranzan family, McGillis was caught in the censure of the Baguranzan family and could not escape at all. Moreover, McGillis' expression remained gentle and calm in the face of the increasingly unpleasant words. It must be known that among the people who were censuring McGillis, there were also many girls who had clearly expressed their admiration and even love for him not long ago. There was an endless stream of censors, wave after wave. It was as if from the moment McGillis appeared, the news of him entering the Baguranzan family alone had spread all over the world, attracting all of the Baguranzan family members who knew of Duke Baguranzan's death. From morning to noon, from noon to evening, from evening to late at night, the crowd that was censuring McGillis had changed several times. But as the central figure of the censure storm, McGillis did not eat a single drop of water, nor did he eat a single grain of rice. From beginning to end, he maintained a gentle and sincere smile as he faced the crowd that was censuring him. This scene made the other 7-star families who had heard the news exclaim in surprise. "Damn it! Calta, why did you stop me? Those bastards are just venting their anger. McGillis is not the murderer." As one of the people who had heard the news, Galio wanted to rush up and help McGillis the moment he saw him being surrounded. But Calta pulled him back. "Galio, let that man go. Right now, he is walking on the path he is pursuing." Calta's gaze surprised Galio. He remembered that Calta loved McGillis. How did he become so unfamiliar? Seeing McGillis being scolded by the Baguranzan family, Calta was actually able to remain calm and say, "Let him be." "How so, Galio?" Calta turned around and looked at Galio. He found that Galio's eyes seemed to have a trace of unfamiliarity. "Calta issue. Are you really Calta yet you?" Galio could not believe that Calta would view McGillis's predicament as a stranger. "Yes, I'm Calta issue. The real Calta issue. Galio." The old Calta issue had died the moment he was captured. The current Calta Yetu is just a pitiful person who understands reality. Calta whispered something that Galio could not understand before he turned and left. He did not have the slightest intention to stay here, nor did he have the intention to stay and help McGillis. That clean and neat figure made Galio feel more and more unfamiliar. "This is the end. Have you guys had enough? Duke Farid is only here to tell our respected Duke Baguranzan his last words. What are you guys doing? Get out of the way. Let Duke Farid in." Finally, when the full moon hung high in the sky, the person who had a certain amount of authority in the Baguranzan family's main residence could no longer sit still. Seeing the crowd surrounding him fall silent and slowly retreat to make way for him, McGillis knew that he had taken the first step. The first step towards that step. "Bailey Gouda, are you waiting for me now?" The news of Lars Horn's headquarters being attacked spread like the wind across the world. Especially when the members of the 7-star families scattered all over the world left their residences and gathered at Jia Lars Horn's headquarters, it confirmed that Jia Lars Horn's headquarters was attacked by an unknown force. When this news spread out, it shocked and terrified all the major economic circles in the world. First, it was the revival of disaster sacrifice, then it was the attack on Lars Horn's headquarters. Even if the major economic circles did not know the details of the attack on Lars Horn's headquarters, they could still guess the general outcome. The basis was the 7-star family's members who were constantly leaving their residences and returning to Lars Horn's headquarters. Who would have thought? There would be a day when Lars Horn's headquarters would be attacked. Since I was born, Lars Horn's headquarters was like the most powerful castle in human history. It could not fall. Holding the photos from the intelligence channel, Sher Miao could not help but sigh. "Representative Sher Miao, what happened?" Olga, who was summoned by Sher Miao, was confused. Did something happen to the members of the 7-star families? Even without looking at the photos, Ray Minkai, who had arrived earlier than Olga, could tell from Sure Meow's expression that something was amiss. Yes. Although the news has not been confirmed, from the information from the other economic circles, especially the main residences of the Baguranzan family, it is very likely that something happened to the oldest member of Lars Horn's headquarters. The oldest member? With Sure Meow's sigh and the information that McGillis had divulged, Ray Minkai seemed to have a rough idea of what had happened. However, he didn't expect that Isnario Farid would dare to return to Gallahorn's headquarters and do such a thing even though his plot had been exposed by McGillis. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Ray Minkai's mind. No. Isnario Farid did not return to Lars Horn's headquarters with a fluke mentality and an attempt to deceive everyone. He did it knowing full well. He probably beat Lars Horn at his own game and caused internal strife in Lars Horn's headquarters in one fell swoop. Thinking of this, Ray Minkai looked at Sure Meow and discovered that she seemed to be thinking the same thing. Your Excellency Ray Minkai, what do you think we should do next? Should we ask for help? Or? Sure Meow did not finish the latter half of her sentence. However, Lei Minkai already knew what Sure Meow meant. As an economic circle that had entrusted the military and violent organizations to Lars Horn's headquarters for 300 years, perhaps it was time for them to have enough power to defend themselves. No, Representative Sure Meow. Ask for help. Even if we rely on ourselves, it is not something that can be done in a day. Moreover, we do not know when adversity ritual will appear again. Sure Meow muttered to herself for a moment, glanced at Olga and the others who were looking at the photo, and slowly nodded. Your Excellency is right. But I think that while we ask for help, we can also achieve a certain degree of self-reliance in a short period of time. Ray Minkai also understood what Sure Meow meant, but he was not suitable for it, and did not want to take the initiative to speak. Commander Olga. Until today, the Iron Flower Regiment's commission can be considered completed. But I believe that Commander Olga also knows that the current situation has already caused our Abro to be in a terrible fix. So, before the remuneration is calculated, I wonder if Commander Olga is willing to accept a new commission? Seeing that Ray Minkai did not take the initiative to reveal her thoughts, Sure Meow simply spoke her mind. No, we are aware of the current situation. In terms of remuneration, Miss Gudelia has already given us an answer, there is no need. Olga, who subconsciously replied to Sure Meow, suddenly froze, and belatedly cried out in surprise. New commission? Looking at Olga's surprised expression, Sure Meow nodded in satisfaction. Yes, new commission. Perhaps the Olga in front of her was more in line with Sure Meow's general impression of a young man, but a certain silent guy was too calm. Wait. I wonder if the new commission is for the Iron Flower Regiment to be on guard against the possibility of another doom ritual for Abro? After being surprised, Olga quickly understood what Sure Meow meant. And, thinking this way, Olga also understood the meaning behind the photo. Now that Lars Horn's headquarters was attacked, Abro might be the first to have his own power. Olga looked at Ray Minkai, and found that Ray Minkai gave him a look that said do as you see fit. Seeing this, Olga was silent for a moment and then nodded. I understand what Sure Meow means. And the Iron Flower Regiment has no intention of rejecting. Not to mention, even if the Iron Flower Regiment leaves Earth now, after the revival of the Doom Ritual, they will not be able to remain unscathed. No matter if it is Lars Horn or the ancient Doom Ritual, they will probably spread the flames of war to Mars. That is indeed a possibility. Then, Regiment Commander Olga, do you agree to help defend Abro and train a new national defense force for Abro? Yes. Sure Meow. The Iron Flower Regiment agrees. Regardless of the process, the Iron Flower Regiment still embarked on the path of cooperation with Abro. This result was not bad for Ray Minkai. The extreme north of the world. In the vast wilderness covered by snow, a huge and vast underground space was shrouded in bright light. Under the bright light, black blue men were dragging pieces of armor out of the warehouse. They lined up in an orderly formation and entered the center of the vast underground space. They neatly placed the armor in a specially designated equipment storage area. Next to the equipment storage area, there was a M.A. Hammonds that lost both arms and only had a sharp steel head and body left. From the outside, the heavily injured M.A. Hammonds was motionless, as if it was a creature that had fallen into a coma due to severe injuries. But in reality, its AI program was instructing the black Bloomin servants that filled this underground space to prepare the materials needed to repair its body. In the previous battle, it had encountered the most terrifying weapon in its database. The taboo weapon created by humans hundreds of years ago. One after another, H.A. Hammonds started up the countermeasures one after another. It wanted to use this time to find a way to deal with the so-called taboo weapon. At the same time, above this vast space, there was a balcony suspended in midair. In the middle of the balcony, a beautiful figure was standing there, overlooking the M.A. Hammonds repair work. Strangely, the M.A. Hammonds and its Blue Men army, which regarded humans as enemies and vowed to exterminate humans, turned a blind eye to this beautiful figure. M.A. Hammonds. A cold voice slowly sounded. The M.A. Hammonds that was silently running the calculation program raised its head and looked at the beautiful figure. Calculate according to the program I provided you. That kind of weapon is not worthy of your attention. His amber pupils flickered with the light of extreme rationality, and that cold voice had become Ma Hammond's guidance at this moment. 1. As soon as his voice fell, a low and deep voice reverberated from Hammond's body. Its calculations on the so-called taboo weapon were immediately cancelled and replaced with the mysterious program given to it by the beautiful figure. Seeing Ma Hammond's fall silent again, the beautiful figure slowly nodded her head, as if she was very satisfied with Ma Hammond's performance. If you're here, then come out. This is not your Lars Horn headquarters. Immediately after, when the beautiful figure spoke again, another figure appeared at the balcony's entrance. It was a middle-aged man. He was wearing Lars Horn's brigadier general uniform and holding a cane. He walked step by step until he was 3 meters behind the beautiful figure. He placed his right hand on his chest and respectfully bowed to the beautiful figure. I'm very sorry. I'm sorry to disturb your mood. Esteemed Ms. Lamia Labrise. Disturb? You little bug didn't disturb me. The cold voice had just spoken, but it suddenly became arrogant and aloof. But the words that were close to an insult did not make the middle-aged man angry, because he knew that the sudden change in tone was only a small problem of the esteemed lady in front of him. Right. This is just a small problem that can't reach the apex. Madam, I've already followed the plan and caused a disturbance in Lars Horn. But I'm afraid this won't last long. Whether it's Lestar Arian or my good son, they won't let Lars Horn continue like this. Restel Arion? That man? It doesn't matter. The beautiful figure known as Lamia Labrise smiled coldly. No matter how much it struggles, this world cannot escape from the hands of the Council. Don't you think so? Isnario Farid. Yes. Esteemed Madam. Chapter 734. Lars Horn Headquarters. Unknown to the world, a mysterious place that only existed in the mouths of a few people. The secret hidden deep in a spacious underground space of Lars Horn Headquarters was finally going to be revealed. Standing in front of the gate that isolated the secret hidden by Gallowhorn hundreds of years ago from the world, McGillis suddenly felt that all the efforts he had made, the price he had paid, and even the humiliation he had suffered had been fulfilled in an instant. Is this enough? A voice with a hint of mockery sounded from behind McGillis. McGillis understood the meaning of the words, but he did not get angry because of it. Instead, he withdrew his gaze from the door and turned his head slightly to look at the man who appeared beside him without him knowing. No, human desire can never be satisfied. After all, to satisfy one's own desire, one must pay a corresponding price. McGillis smiled, then stepped forward, raised his hand and pressed on the steel door that had been isolated for a long time. The current me just happens to have the qualifications to realize the true meaning I pursue. Qualifications? The person raised his eyebrows and laughed a few times before replying with a meaningful tone, "That's right. That is indeed a kind of qualification. No one would have thought that in order to have this qualification, there would be someone who dared to gamble with their own safety. A bet? Perhaps so. But I won't forget. The person who can let me have this qualification is you, Mr. K. Mr. Lou Lucio v. Britannia. Haha. That was just responding to Mr. McGillis' thoughts. I didn't do anything that would make McGillis remember. The person who came was Lou Lucio. Moreover, from the fact that there was no one else other than McGillis and Lou Lucio, McGillis already trusted Lou Lucio a lot. For McGillis, who had personally killed his childhood sweethearts and best friends, Calta and Galileo, in the original work, this was simply unimaginable. Moreover, from the conversation between the two, McGillis' past seemed to have been learned by Lou Lucio. And the person himself did not show any resistance to this, nor did he show any signs of anger out of embarrassment. It's about time, Duke Farid. If this continues, the doom ritual will appear first. Lou Lucio raised his hand, glanced at his wristwatch, and reminded him. McGillis slowly nodded. You're right. It's time to awaken the true meaning that has been sleeping for a long time. Ka. Rumble. The steel door that had been isolated for hundreds of years slowly opened with a heavy rumble. The existence that had been sleeping for hundreds of years, the symbol of the supreme power in McGillis' heart, also appeared in front of his eyes. Looking at the silent steel giant, McGillis could not help but reveal a trace of fanaticism and yearning. How long? How long? How long? Wandering in the alleys that no one cared about, struggling to survive in that gorgeous building that was filled with evil, struggling to survive in those beautiful surroundings, unaffected by the noise of the world, and only to please one person. Furthermore, he struggled to survive as the successor of Farid in the territory that was crowned as a 7 stars family. Since that moment when he was weak, helpless, and humiliated, he had become the most powerful man in the world. McGillis understood one thing. He needed power. He needed to change everything. No. He needed the power to completely reverse his fate. On a certain helpless and tormented night, he saw a glimmer of hope. In the book called The Biography of Agunica Cairo, he saw a glimmer of hope for what he believed to be the supreme power. Now, the symbol of power, strength, power, vitality, influence, and even violence, which was claimed by the book to contain the world's power, strength, might, strength, vitality, influence, and even violence, was right before his eyes. The rumble of the door opening slowly stopped. But McGillis still did not take that step. This made Lou Lucio, who was standing beside him and assisting McGillis, feel a little surprised. From their contact during this period of time, McGillis' desire for Gao de Bayeri could be said to be a microcosm of his life. In order to achieve this goal, he would not hesitate to sell everything that he could. Such an extreme man, at the moment when he was about to achieve his lifelong wish, he stopped. In the silence, McGillis looked at Gao de Bayeri with a slight fluctuation in his eyes. Then, he raised his hand and unbuttoned his shirt, revealing the cold device that was installed on his spine at an unknown time. Alea Consciousness System. McGillis actually took the risk to install this device that could only be installed by teenagers in the growth stage without anyone's knowledge. Your Excellency Lou Lucio, when you go back, please help me pass a message to my fiancée, Amelia. This mission might take some time. But rest assured, my sister, Nanami, has been getting along very well with Miss Amelia recently. I believe that in a short time, she won't feel lonely. That is, as long as Duke Farid can resolve everything before then. McGillis casually tossed the clothes, he took off to the side and nodded slowly. In that case, I'll leave it to your Excellency Lulucio. Agunica Kairu. Gauda Bayeri. After hundreds of years of sleep, it was time to wake up. Just like the old enemy it had at the beginning of its life. The far north. Even the boundless white snow couldn't cover the black waves that appeared again. The cold red light flashing in the black waves was the light emitted by the cold electronic eyes of the small MA called Blumen when it moved at high speed. Looking from afar, it was a scene that made people tremble with fear on the rolling black wave. TCH. Sure enough, it appeared again. These bastards. At the edge of the far north, in a frontier post built by Abro, Sino, who was ordered to rotate the surveillance mission, put down his binoculars, cursed, and then picked up the communicator beside him. This is Frontier Number 1, did the headquarters receive? After a few seconds of silence, Olga's voice came from the other end of the communicator. This is the headquarters. Sino, what's the situation on your side? Very bad. The number has increased a lot compared to a few days ago. It's just a world of ice and snow. Where did these bastards find the resources? Including Sino, all the people involved in the frontier surveillance mission had been highlighted by Ray Minkai. In addition to not challenging the MA army alone, it was not to be afraid of the sudden increase in the number of MA army. To this end, Ray Minkai stuffed a thick stack of information to Sino and asked them to read the information about M.A. Hammonds. Although the stack of information was very thick, Sino, who barely managed to finish reading it, was still able to calmly observe the increasing number of M.A. troops. He did not follow Abro's example, who had just learned the basic operation of the mobile engineers and rushed up to show off, only to be drowned by Blumen's army in the end. He was ignorant and fearless. Hey, head. How long are we going to monitor? Although we can still stay calm, I'm afraid that the other side can't help it? In the face of the growing MA army, Abro, who was defeated in Edmonton, finally couldn't sit still. The original plan was to let the rookies who had undergone a certain amount of training to assist the Iron Blood Regiment in the frontier position. Otherwise, after the reckless and hot-blooded rookie pilots were surrounded and killed by the Blumen army a few days ago, those who were Abro's frontline commanders not only did not punish the relevant personnel, but also secretly encouraged other rookies who were frightened by the MA army. This approach, Sino saw in his eyes and sighed in his heart. If the Blumen army could be killed by the rookies who were casually encouraged, the war of sacrifice would not have happened. Sino. Wait. We have a plan here. Just wait for the right time. Olga's words made Sino shrug his shoulders. He didn't know when Olga's timing was. Roger. Then, let's wait here. The communication from the forward surveillance position ended. But Olga's heart could not calm down. Are you afraid? Olga. At this time, Ray Minkai's voice sounded. No. I'm not afraid. I'm just wondering when this calamity sacrificial battle will end. Olga shook her head and said with a sigh, in the past few days I've found information related to the war of sacrifice 300 years ago from the representative of Shermao. But I can't find a way to solve the current war of sacrifice from the past. Olga's eagerness to learn surprised Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai laughed out loud, praising Olga a little. I didn't expect Commander Olga to be so eager to learn. Well, it would be a good idea to look for similar cases and solutions from the past. But, even if you can't find it, you don't have to be discouraged. After a pause, Lei Minkai gave Olga some time to recover from his previous words, then he continued, that's right. History is history. It can only provide us with a reference for the development of things, but it can't solve the current problem by making us copybooks. Not to mention, this war of sacrifice is not without a way to solve it in a short period of time. Carefully listening to Ray Minkai's words, Olga suddenly had an idea and caught the key point. Your Excellency, you're saying there's a way to solve this war of sacrifice? Yes, there is. But it's going to be very difficult. Since the battle with the Black Bow Angel, Ray Minkai has listed the Black Bow Angel as his first goal. Even though M.A. Hammonds is regarded as a natural enemy by the humans of this world, Ray Minkai knows that the existence of the Black Bow Angel is more terrifying than M.A. Hammonds. Let's not talk about anything else. Just the flickering black flames around the Bow Angel's body alone would be enough to instantly engulf Edmonton in a sea of fire and consign it to eternal damnation if it went out of control. Such a terrifying existence must be solved as soon as possible. At the same time, the key to solving this war of sacrifice is very likely to be on the Black Bow Angel. Olga, continue to monitor the movements of M.A.'s army. If there are any changes, inform me immediately. Ray Minkai's sudden solemn attitude made Olga stunned, but he still nodded. Is there something worth paying attention to? Ray Minkai pondered for a moment and decided to tell Olga something. Well, for example, if the appearance of those blue men suddenly changes, or if they act abnormally, you must inform me immediately. In addition, be careful not to fight with blue man whose appearance has changed and who acts abnormally. Do you understand? Olga frowned, as if he was still digesting Ray Minkai's words. After a while, Olga nodded her head heavily. I understand. I will personally take charge of this side. As long as there is news, I will immediately inform Your Excellency. This warning was destined not to be carried out by Olga personally, because, in the next second, Sino, who had just completed the routine communication, suddenly sent back a message. A message of life and death. Leader, can you hear me? Something big is happening now. Those swarthy fellows are on the move. Sino's tone was very anxious, but there was no other sound in the communication except for Sino's anxious voice. Not to mention, the movement of Bluman's army will inevitably make a huge noise. Sino, calm down. What happened? Ray Minkai stepped forward and took the headset from the correspondent and asked. It's Your Excellency. Yes, that's right. The group of dark and swarthy fellows began to move. But they are not moving in the direction of Edmonton, but to the west. To the west! Ray Minkai and Olga looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Sino, speak clearly. Are they all moving to the west, or are they splitting their forces to the west? Yes, they are splitting their forces. Leader, Your Excellency, I saw a lot of swarthy guys running to the west. Although they could not see Sino's expression, the two could still hear Sino's gestures on the other side of the communication channel from his voice. Forget it. I'll just make a trip there. Leader Olga, I'll leave this to you. After hearing the last part, Ray Minkai gave up on the idea of continuing to ask Sino about the situation. But Your Excellency's body can't be used anymore, right? Olga immediately thought of the free Gouda lying inside Neku, unable to be repaired in a short time. Body? Don't worry. I still have partners here that I can rely on. A few hours later, when the Storm Fong Lion wearing azure armor rushed to the frontline surveillance position, more than half of Bluman's army that should have dyed the white snow black had already gone to the west. At this moment, Ray Minkai's expression was dignified. Olga, this is Ray Minkai. Do you have any news on your side? This is Olga. We did receive some news. In just a few short moments, Olga's voice became a little shaky. Your Excellency, just half an hour ago, the rest of the economic circles sent out a request for help. The ancient doom ritual has completely erupted on Earth. Even the moon has many riots due to the revival of doom ritual. Chapter 735. The Earth's Outer Orbit Unified Fleet finally welcomed their commander back. However, before this joy could rise, it was interrupted by a sudden piece of news. The ancient disaster sacrifice that should have disappeared in the long river of history had been revived. This news was not a secret to the higher-ups of Lars Horn. After Hammonds attacked Edmonton, Gjallarhorn's headquarters received the relevant information. Moreover, the source of this information was almost all from the survivors when Hammonds attacked Edmonton. The survivors led by Galio and Calta became the main source of information for Lars Horn to understand this sudden disaster sacrifice. In fact, Lars Horn had no other choice. After Isnario Farid, who was supposed to be the mastermind, caused a ruckus, there were not many options left for Lars Horn. On one hand, under the operation of McGillis, he successfully entered the secret space hidden under Lars Horn's headquarters. On the other hand, Calta returned to the Earth's outer orbit unified fleet as quickly as possible and regained command of this fleet. Before the ancient disaster sacrifice was revived, Lars Horn's headquarters and even the other fleets ridiculed this unworthy fleet. However, in the current situation, only this fleet could deal with and even suppress the disaster sacrifice riots that broke out all over the Earth in the shortest amount of time. Although this was the case, most of the crew members of this fleet came from all over the Earth. From the moment the disaster sacrifice broke out, information from all over the Earth quickly drowned out these crew members' vision. Fear, unease, worry, even panic, this was the first scene that Calta saw when he returned to the fleet. In this regard, Calta did not immediately scold these people. The commander who remained silent and did not take the initiative to express his position seemed to be verifying something. He even faintly became the driving force of the repressed storm. Sir Calta, no matter what, say something first? The subordinates who were lucky enough to survive the battle in the snowfield were naturally happy to see their beloved commander return safe and sound. However, the current situation had reached the point where Calta could no longer remain silent even if he wanted to. Carta, who was sitting on the captain's seat, looked up and glanced at his subordinates who he valued a lot in the past. Then, he withdrew his gaze and ignored them. Such a reaction made his subordinates even more anxious. Lord Calta. In the next second, Calta raised his right hand and stopped his subordinates from speaking. Calm down. I am very happy that you are still alive. However, now was not the time to act rashly. It's not just the people in the headquarters who are watching us, but also the major economic circles of the human world. Calta's voice was less high-spirited than before, but more steady, which made the subordinates who were familiar with Calta's style feel a little strange. However, should the subordinates be happy for Calta's change? Or do you feel more anxious and uneasy? Calta saw the anxiety of his subordinates, and also saw them wanting to say something but hesitating. After she looked around the bridge, she slowly stood up and said slowly, "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. I understand everyone's concerns. I also understand everyone's fear. However, right now, the closest fleet to Earth is outside of the Earth's orbit. The other fleets will need at least 3 days to reach Earth's orbit. Moreover, their mission probably won't be to land on Earth immediately and suppress the ancient Doom sacrifice. Instead, they will choose to go to the Moon and attack the active Doom sacrifice there." Calta did not hold back at all as she explained the decision made by Lars Horn's headquarters before she returned to the fleet. Even though it was cruel, it was the truth. The timing of the Doom sacrifice outbreak was too subtle. First, Isnario Farid caused a ruckus at Lars Horn's headquarters. He buried Duke Bagurin Zahn and heavily injured Duke Rydal Arian and Duke Falk. Only the 4 families of Bardawin, Farid, Kazan, and Calta remained. And in this family, the indecisive Duke Bardawin was the leader, followed by McGillis Farid, Iagu Kazan, and Calta Yetu. From this, it could be seen that Lars Horn, who seemed to have retained most of its strength, was already on the verge of splitting. Putting aside whether Duke Bardawin could stabilize the situation of Lars Horn after losing the oldest Duke Bagurin Zahn, Iagu Kazan, who became anxious because the most respected Rydal Arian was seriously injured and unconscious, had already become a hidden danger for Lars Horn. In this situation, Calta knew very well that the first thing she had to do was to stabilize the Earth's orbit command fleet, then wait for an opportunity to move. Kalta's explanation made her subordinates speechless. For a moment they did not know what to say. What? You were so anxious just now. Now, have all of you become mutes? Kalta smiled, a trace of disdain in her eyes. This made her subordinates feel even more ashamed. Okay. No need to worry. Soon, the hope of breaking out of this situation will come. As if responding to Kalta's speculation, an emergency call from Earth became the opportunity for the Earth's Orbit Command Fleet to move again. Report. Commander. Headquarters called. Duke Kazan and the guards led by him lost contact with headquarters 12 hours ago. The arrival of this news made Kalta suddenly straighten up, and her eyes became abnormally sharp. Iago Kazan, you really did move. As mentioned earlier, Iago Kazan, who had seen the most respected and worshipped person in his life, Ristel Aryan, severely injured and unconscious, would most likely take some drastic actions after learning about the outbreak of the ancient doom ritual. Now, this speculation in the hearts of the three heirs of Bardawin, Farid, and Yetu really came true. Sir Kalta. His subordinates, who had also heard the news, hurriedly shouted out. No need to say any more. I know what you want to say, but now is not the time. Not the time. I don't want to say the same thing a third time. After witnessing Kalta's reaction to the news of Iago Kazan's disappearance, the subordinates who were once again rejected by her looked at each other. Waiting. Still waiting. As the last battleship of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet arrived and joined the main force, several hours had passed. During this period, not only was there news from Lars Horn headquarters, but there were also emergency communications from major economic circles around the world, asking for help and other information. But in the face of this flood of information, Kalta was still able to maintain a calm and unhurried attitude, calmly responding to the requests for help from all sides. It was not until a message from Abro came that Kalta's calm face began to fluctuate. It was a land of the extreme north covered by vast ice and snow. It was also a mysterious place shrouded in a faintly discernible aurora that resembled a soaring dragon. However, this video from the mysterious land of the extreme north faithfully recorded the process of a fierce battle that took place. The cold and fierce wind swept across the entire wasteland from north to south, causing the humans in this wasteland to stop in their tracks and look in awe at the nature that had caused this terrifying storm. However, under this awe, there were some humans full of courage. They were wearing thick winter clothes and lying on their stomachs behind piles of snow. Using their eyes hidden behind thick and warm masks, they silently stared at the wasteland covered in snow and ice. They stared at the northernmost land that might undergo a change. Hey, Seno, why aren't you in MS? What are you doing here? Don't you think it's cold enough outside? After Eugene put down the binoculars that were covered with a thin layer of snow in less than a minute, he reached out and pushed the guy next to him, who ran out of the warm cockpit of MS. Hey, Eugene, don't say that. Although the cockpit is very warm, it will make people sleepy after a long time. It's all those dark guys' fault. After half of them were sent out a few days ago, the rest didn't move at all. Even if a blizzard comes, they're still dead. Seno grinned, but he was unexpectedly poured a mouthful of cold wind, almost making him jump on the spot. Looking at the uncomfortable look on his partner's face, Eugene was both amused and helpless as he handed his thermos flask to Seno. See, you don't want to stay in the cockpit, but you have to come out and suffer. Seno stepped back a little and found a position that was slightly away from the wind. He drank a few mouthfuls of warm water to warm his body and laughed. I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. I'm just curious about what kind of movement Your Excellency will make later. Seno finally said the reason why he didn't want to stay in the cockpit, but ran out to the ice and snow to suffer. Your Excellency? At the same time when the Tusk Lion Zero came to the extreme north, it also brought Ray Minkai's decision. In order to test the intentions of the Blue Man Army, who had been biding their time since the division, Ray Minkai finally decided to use the Tusk Lion Zero as the main firepower reconnaissance mission. Although this decision was opposed by Olga, Eugene, and others when it was made public, but because of Ray Minkai's support for the Iron Flower Regiment, Olga and Eugene finally agreed. However, in order to ensure that the Tusk Lion Zero and Ray Minkai could provide enough firepower support while completing the mission, Olga could be said to have painstaking efforts. While ensuring that the Iron Flower Regiment could provide the necessary armed support for Abro, she also transferred Seno's Meteor and a mobile engineer team to the extreme north, waiting for the Tusk Lion Zero to launch its firepower reconnaissance mission. This move, in Ray Minkai's view, was superfluous. In the Battle of Genesis, the energy core swallowed by the Tusk Lion Zero had almost been digested. As long as Ray Minkai and the Tusk Lion Zero had a tacit understanding, and used it properly, even if the Black Bow Angel appeared in front of him again, Ray Minkai would have the confidence to fight it. But no matter what, Ray Minkai still accepted Olga's kindness. The sky gradually darkened. The wind that swept through the snowfield became more violent and also more bone-chilling. The rapidly decreasing temperature made Eugene and Seno feel at a loss. It's about time. Seno, Eugene, come back. Or else, Olga will settle the score with me. Due to the low temperature, the communication device that was not working well sounded out. From the intermittent voice, Seno and Eugene could tell that the person who called them was Ray Minkai. It's about time. Let's go back. Okay. Glancing at each other, the two of them who were aware that they were about to be unable to withstand the increasingly cold temperature quietly retreated, pulling apart the distance between them and the silent extreme northern wasteland. Next, it was time for the Tusk Lion Zero to make its debut. Whoa whoa whoa. The moment the sky turned completely dark, a signal flare that even the wind could not cover its sharp whistling sound rose into the air, and instantly woke up all the dead things that were covered by the snow. The red light that lit up under the white snow continued to extend backward, from the area that was scattered by the signal flare, all the way to a further, darker place. At first glance, the river formed by countless red lights was a bloody river that flowed from the dark hell to the mortal world. This amount. There are actually so many of them? Seno, who had returned to the cockpit of the Meteor, saw the shocking red river at first glance. Even with the radar on the Meteor, it would be difficult to determine in a short time how many Blummans were in the bloody river. Seno, prepare to support His Excellency. Eugene, who was in charge of commanding the mobile engineer team, also saw the moment the bloody river lit up. Urgency, panic, at this moment, the pressure on Eugene, who had always wanted to surpass Olga, was on his shoulders. However, before Sino could respond, a roar that was even more piercing and shocking than the sound of a signal flare tore apart the wild wind that swept across the land of the extreme north. Roar! The sky was dark, the wind was howling, under the gloomy heaven domain, two cold golden lights quietly lit up. In the vast snow, the golden cold lights were like living creatures, sometimes contracting, sometimes expanding and swaying. Roar! With another roar, the wind and snow that swept the world seemed to stagnate, revealing the owner of the roar that penetrated the blizzard hidden under the dark sky. His golden mane of steel was like a supreme crown. The blood-red armor protected the gigantic steel lion's head, body, and limbs under it. The golden sharp teeth and claws emitted a cold light that seemed to be able to tear apart the blizzard that swept across the world. What made Eugene and Seno, who were watching the steel lion slowly walking out of the blizzard under the dark sky, even more concerned was the pair of blades that came from the heels of the front claws. If the steel lion wearing the golden crown and red lotus armor had sharp claws and sharp teeth that were terrifying enough, then the pair of blades that extended from the heels of the front claws would be even more terrifying. No! It should be said that it would make the Blumman servants who were buried in the blizzard tremble in fear. That is, if these AI that only knew how to execute emotionless programs had feelings. Roar! Standing on a snowy hill and looking down at the bright and shocking blood-red river of light, the steel lion wearing a golden crown and red lotus armor was burning with fighting spirit. In an instant, a red light shot down from the snow hill and headed straight for the bloody river. Chapter 736. In the dark sky covered by the snowstorm, a red river of light was surging. It was as if a great wave had been stirred up, turning this snow-swept world upside down. In this movement that faintly suppressed the howling of the snowstorm, there was also a series of explosions that shook the sky. Swoosh! A streak of cold light swept across this world of ice and snow, bringing with it a series of explosions. It was Blue Man. It was the sound of the explosion when the small black MA with the electronic pupil with red light was cut off. These sounds rose and fell one after another, lingering incessantly in the ears. When the momentum was at its peak, even the snowstorm was suppressed by this movement, causing the humans who were watching this battle to be shocked. Hey, Eugene, didn't I remember someone saying that a cat catches a mouse? Now that I think about it, it seems like that's true. Sitting in the warm cockpit, Sino swallowed his saliva and stared at the red lotus steel lion that had charged into Blueman's army and turned the sky upside down. That's not a cat. That's a lion. A lion. Sino. Although Eugene felt the same way, he did not dare to openly admit this in the communication channel. Only God knew if Ray Minkai, who was piloting the red lotus steel lion, was in the communication channel. Sino was stunned, but he immediately understood what Eugene meant. However, he still could not help but mutter, "Put down the size, isn't it just a cat and a mouse?" Roar. As the red lotus steel lion swung its front claws, the two incomparably sharp blades cut through the blue lotus steel lion's army of servants as if they were nothing. It destroyed one that came, split a pair that came, and slashed a group that came. Wherever the red lotus steel lion passed, it left behind the remains of Blueman's army. There were even flames that were waving flags and cheering for the unstoppable red lotus steel lion. Kai, how long are we going to fight here? Although it's refreshing to fight casually, the number of these little things will tire me to death. From the powerful charge at the beginning, to the unstoppable killing, and now to the tiresome situation, State Zero could be said to have had a taste of the human wave tactic. Even though these Blueman servants were not enough, their numbers were indeed frightening. Based on the previous charge alone, even if State Zero did not calculate, he could roughly estimate that he had killed no less than 3 digits of MA's Broomman. But even so, the red river of light in front of the red lotus steel lion was unable to dim even a little. Wait a little longer. Ray Minkai had been observing the movements in the deepest part of the red river of light. It was impossible for such a large number of small Ma servants to be left here. No matter how powerful the program that controls these small MAs is, there is still a core program that is responsible for giving orders. And this was exactly what Ray Minkai was looking for. Although the red lotus steel lion was quite jubilant, in fact, there was no movement in the deepest part of the Red River. It was not shaken by the metal ruins that were being swallowed by the flames behind the red lotus steel lion. There's no other way. State Zero, let's rush in. Roar. It had to be said that Ray Minkai's decision was exactly what State Zero wanted. The pleasure of rushing back and forth in the periphery of the Red River just now had made State Zero feel tired. To completely let State Zero vent the grievances of not being able to use his full strength during this period of time, it must be a stronger and more exciting enemy. As a result, the red lotus steel lion that was rushing back and forth among the Blueman servants suddenly paused, and then took advantage of the moment when the surrounding Blueman servants had not yet reacted. It twisted its body, and the small plasma thrusters on its back, and broke out with a powerful speed that was enough to leave the surrounding Blueman servants behind, and rush to the deepest part of the Red River of Light. With this rush, the seemingly boundless Red River instantly exploded into chaos. Originally, no matter how the Red Lotus Steel Lion rushed, it only shook the periphery of the Red River of Light, and the core troops in the deepest part were still as steady as a rock. However, the Red Lotus Steel Lion's charge caused the entire Red River to start churning. Whether it was the Bloomin' servants behind the Red Lotus Steel Lion, the Bloomin' servants on both sides of the Red Lotus Steel Lion, or even further away, the Bloomin' servants in the deepest part of the Red River of Light, all rushed at the Red Lotus Steel Lion at their fastest speed. Sure enough, there's something strange there. The abnormalities from the surrounding made Ray Minkai even more certain of his speculation. Rush over? State Zero was eager to try. Rush. The answer was obvious. Roar. A roar. The Red Lotus Steel Lion's golden crown-like mane suddenly spread out, and extended out a golden mane that was slender and soft, and could flutter in the wind. As the Red Lotus Steel Lion ran at high speed, its fluttering golden mane flickered in the wind, and an invisible screen suddenly appeared in front of the Red Lotus Steel Lion, crushing all the Bloomin' servants in its way. Boom! 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 A series of sparks and explosions followed the Red Lotus Steel Lion's footsteps closely, extending all the way to the deepest part of the Red River of Light. No matter how many Bloomin' servants there were, or how strong their resistance was, in front of this invisible screen, they were as weak as clay chickens and pottery dogs, and could not stop the Red Lotus Steel Lion's footsteps at all. In just a few minutes, a path of flames with the Red Lotus Steel Lion as an arrow suddenly appeared, and a path to the deepest part of the Red River of Light appeared. 1. Suddenly, a flash of light flashed in front of Ray Minkai. State 0. There was no hesitation. There was no hesitation. The moment his eyes caught the flash of light, Ray Minkai immediately warned his companions. Roar. The Red Lotus Steel Lion, which responded with a roar, immediately lowered its head. The moment the invisible screen became visible, the flash that flickered in the depths of the Red River arrived with a loud bang and directly bombarded the screen that had become visible. Boom! It was a beam of light that was full of terrifying energy and exuded a terrifying heat. Wherever it passed, even the snowstorm that could freeze creatures that rashly entered this world had to retreat. In an instant, the buzzing sound that accompanied the beam of light became the main character of this world, and it also drowned out the position of the Red Lotus Steel Lion. However, this terrifying beam of light did not achieve the result that it should have, because the bright and visible screen had firmly blocked the beam of light that erupted from the depths of the Red River of Light. It did not allow it to move forward at all. The air was trembling. The roar of the energy reaction was even louder. But the screen was still sturdy. No matter how the enemy on the other side of the beam of light stimulated and squeezed out all the energy he could not break the screen in front of the Red Lotus Steel Lion. As time passed, the beam of light that directly bombarded the screen seemed to have a new movement. However, this was not a movement that was about to break through the screen. Instead, it was a movement that was guided by the screen's characteristics and twisted to the sides, causing most of the energy that directly hit the screen to be distorted to the sides of the Red Lotus Steel Lion. While the Red Lotus Steel Lion was competing with the beam of light, Blue Man's army that had been left behind finally caught up. Unexpectedly, they followed in Blue Man's footsteps and were blasted to the sky by the energy beams that were distorted to the left and right of the Red Lotus Steel Lion. Chance. State 0. The pressure brought by the beam of light gradually decreased, and Ray Minkai decisively pushed the push rod to the limit. Roar. The fluttering golden fur became even more flamboyant and magnificent. The Red Lotus Steel Lion's four limbs once again exerted force, and like a cannonball, it charged towards the incoming beam of light. Clang! At the same time, the blades on the Red Lotus Steel Lion's left and right front claws were swung out, and the Blue Man's army that had gathered in front of the Red Lotus Steel Lion to try and stop it once again were chopped into pieces, and immediately lost the ability to stop the Red Lotus Steel Lion. The dazzling light that burst out from the beam of light gradually disappeared. The terrifying high temperature that forced the blizzard to retreat quickly cooled down. Facing the blizzard that was gathering again, the Red Lotus Steel Lion that had broken through the encirclement of Blue Man's army finally broke through to the front of its target. That was an old friend. Even though its body that was mainly white not long ago was now shrouded in a strange darkness, Ray Minkai still recognized the MA with its jaws slightly open, revealing the energy sparks that had yet to disappear. Kai, be careful. This big bird seems to be a little different. As soon as they met, State Zero's intuition made it instinctively warn him. Yes, understood. This guy might have been eroded by the abyss. State Zero's warning seemed to confirm Ray Minkai's conjecture. The obvious change in appearance was very similar to the abyss erosion that Ray Minkai was familiar with. Coupled with the fact that the Black Bow Angel had appeared twice to stop him, the M.A. Hammonds might have been eroded by the abyss. Roar! The Red Lotus Steel Lion raised its head and taunted the Black M.A. Hammonds with a single slap after smashing Bloomin into pieces. Hum! Seemingly provoked by the Red Lotus Steel Lion, the pitch-black M.A. Hammond's body glowed with a red light, forming lines that looked extremely strange. In the next second, the M.A. Hammond's long sharp head suddenly raised, and the moment it let out a cry, it actually soared into the air and quickly distanced itself from the Red Lotus Steel Lion. Not good. That big bird is escaping. State Zero did not wait for Ray Minkai to speak and was ready to jump up and forcefully slap the M.A. Hammonds down from the sky. In the end, before the Red Lotus Steel Lion could even jump up, the pitch-black M.A. Hammonds took the initiative and shot another beam of light at the Red Lotus Steel Lion from above. Of course, just like before, this beam of light didn't hit the Red Lotus Steel Lion. It was blocked by the screen. However, this delay caused the Red Lotus Steel Lion to lose the opportunity to stop the M.A. Hammonds in time. The M.A. Hammonds flew up into the sky and circled above the battlefield, commanding the Blue Man's servants to surround and attack the Red Lotus Steel Lion while waiting for an opportunity to fire its beam cannons to find the Red Lotus Steel Lion's weakness. Swoosh! The Red Lotus Steel Lion sword flashed, and close to 4 digits of the Blue Man's servants died under the Red Lotus Steel Lion's sword. However, they still fearlessly swarmed towards the Red Lotus Steel Lion. Their goal was to create an opportunity for Hammonds, who was hovering above the battlefield, to defeat or even kill the Red Lotus Steel Lion. Roar! State Zero let out a roar in displeasure. So what if you can fly? Kai, kill that damned bird. Let's go. Ray Minkai did not waste any more words. The endless Blue Man's miniatures not only annoyed State Zero, but also gave Ray Minkai a headache. No matter how many times they destroyed, they would always be able to fill in the gaps. It was as if the gaps had already been arranged from the beginning, and were only waiting for the Red Lotus Steel Lion to attack. The wind whistled. The blade of the sword moved with the wind. The Red Lotus Steel Lion spun a few times on the spot, then suddenly stopped. It lowered its body, exerted force on its 4 limbs, and leaped up. It leaped over the head of the Black Brahmin and landed firmly on the shimmering screen that appeared under its feet. Then, it leaped up again, repeatedly using the shimmering screen as a stepping stone as it pounced toward the Black Brahmin. Not only did State Zero's move cause the Blue Man's minions to freeze, it also caused the M.A. Hammonds to be unable to react in time. Fortunately, the order that Ma Hammonds had received was to wipe out all enemies that came to invade their territory. The shocking move of the Red Lotus Steel Lion only caused the Black M.A. Hammonds to issue a warning that it could not be analyzed, before it was immediately covered by the attack priority program. 1. The light of the beam cannon tore through the sky, breaking through the blockade of the blizzard and heading straight for the Red Lotus Steel Lion that was charging into the sky using the screen as its step. This time, the Red Lotus Steel Lion didn't take the attack head-on. Instead, it stepped on the screen wall and avoided the beam cannon's firing axis in time, avoiding the attack. TSK. You still like to play dirty. Looking at the light beam that pierced through the air and created a gap in Blumann's army, State Zero decisively gave up on stepping on the screen wall and used a movement method that it was not used to yet. Wung 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 wung. A low rumbling sound came from the Red Lotus Steel Lion's back. Countless light particles appeared from thin air, and with the Red Lotus Steel Lion's back as the center, they quickly gathered to form a pair of similar silhouettes. Crack, bang. Immediately after, the sound of something breaking rang out. A pair of dazzling wings appeared on the Red Lotus Steel Lion's back. As the wings flapped, the Red Lotus Steel Lion led the Red Lotus Steel Lion to avoid the attack that followed closely behind. In just a split second, a meteor appeared above the beam of light. In a barbaric and unreasonable manner, it directly knocked the pitch-black Hammonds down from the sky. Boom! The shockwave caused by the heavy object crashing into the ground caused Brumann's servants, who were closest to it, to stagger and lose their formation. At the center of the shockwave, the Crimson Lotus Steel Lion raised its front claws and viciously slammed down on the pitch-black Hammonds beneath its body. You can fly. Amazing! Chapter 737. When the Red Lotus Steel Lion was beating up Hammonds, on the battlefield on the other side of the earth, a young man, whose forehead was filled with anger and his chest was filled with burning hot blood, clenched his fists and stared at the city engulfed by the flames of war for a long time. Since the revival of the ancient Calamity sacrifice, dozens of cities had been destroyed by the eruption of Calamity sacrifice. The city in front of the young man was one of these dozens of cities, and it was a city that had just fallen. If the young man and the troops he led could have arrived half an hour earlier, the city might not have fallen. At the very least, they could have saved more people. Lord Iagu, our troops have finished assembling. We can move out at any time. The subordinates loyal to the young man, Iagu Kazan, and also loyal to the Kazan family, and even more loyal to Lars Horn ran up from the bottom of the hill. Yes, I know. Get ready for battle. We've already missed this city. Iagu Kazan sighed in his heart. It had been almost half a month since Ristel Aryan fell into a coma from his injuries, right? During this period of time, Iagu Kazan felt like a year, and he was burned by the raging flames of anger for a long time. It was so long that Iagu Kazan felt as if he had lost his anger. Fortunately, at this time, he led his subordinates away from Lars Horn's headquarters and came here to witness the fall of the city after it was attacked by Calamity sacrifice. From this, Iagu Kazan could feel that the flames of anger caused by revenge still existed in his heart. Looking at the burning city, he was shocked. Iagu Kazan looked at the scattered sparks from the city that were swept up by the hot wind. He suddenly felt that he should say something, but he did not say anything in the end. Until another subordinate with an anxious expression brought a piece of shocking news. Lord Iagu! Lord Iagu! What's wrong? Why are you in such a panic? The subordinate standing next to Iagu Kazan could not help but scold him. Yes. This subordinate has been rude, but I'm sure Lord Io will be very concerned about this information. The man who had brought the report carefully presented it to Iagu Kazan. Ianu was a little puzzled, but he still reached out to take it. When he opened it, his expression changed. The next second, Iaglu raised his head again and gnashed his teeth. To actually dare to appear so brazenly. Isnario Farid! You traitor! The information brought by his subordinates was not his business. Instead, it was a special piece of information that came from the encrypted communication channel used by the Seven Stars family. According to intelligence agents who risked their lives to investigate, a man suspected to be Isnario Farid had appeared somewhere in the Mediterranean region of the African Union before the outbreak of adversity sacrifice. The appearance of this information was undoubtedly an opportunity for Iagu to vent his anger. Everyone, Now is the time to wash away the humiliation of us and Lars Horn's headquarters being attacked. It's a great opportunity to bring the shame of giving birth to a traitor and triggering an ancient adversity sacrifice to us and Lars Horn's traitor, Isnario Farid. Squeezing the paper in his hand into a ball, Iagr Cousin gritted his teeth and growled. At the same time, the subordinates who heard the commotion gathered around him. Looking at these subordinates with respect, trust, and even worship on their faces, Iagr Cousin slowly raised his right hand and said righteously, "Everyone, now is a great opportunity for us and Lars Horn to wash away the humiliation. The whereabouts of the traitor Isnario Farid have been locked down by us. Next, we will personally kill this traitor, and let us and Lars Horn bask in supreme glory again. So everyone, please lend me your strength. Yes, Lord Io. Yes, as long as I can follow Lord Io, I will do anything." In the face of Iagr Cousin's words, the subordinates expressed their most sincere thoughts. Therefore, Iagr and his group followed the guidance of the intelligence and came to a country south of the Mediterranean Sea in Africa. This place was also under attack from the ancient adversity sacrifice. Fortunately, compared to other cities that were focused on by the ancient adversity sacrifice, this city, which was located on the edge of the desert and was only built as a supply point when entering the desert, did not suffer a strong attack from the ancient adversity sacrifice. Relying on the small number of troops in this city, it miraculously supported the outbreak of the first wave of the ancient adversity sacrifice. Therefore, when they saw Iagr Cousin leading a mobile force consisting of 5 glaziers and many mobile engineers from afar, the person in charge of the city took the initiative to greet them. "Assist in the defense? No. Mr. Mayor, you misunderstand. We're going to pursue the traitor. It's not our duty to assist in the defense." Unexpectedly, the enthusiastic mayor was rejected by Iagr before he could put his warm face on the table. Then, before the mayor could react, Iagr immediately asked, "Do you know the whereabouts of Isnario Farid? According to our intelligence, this damned traitor once appeared near this city." Traitor? The poor mayor took a long time to recover from Iagr's question, and when he saw Iagr Cousin's displeased expression, he bowed and apologized again and again. "Sorry. Very sorry. I was just recalling the list of people who appeared during this period of time." The mayor, who was afraid of offending Iagr Cousin, was quick-witted and casually said a reason that made Iagr Cousin somewhat concerned. Yes. If it really was Isnario Farid who appeared in the vicinity of our city, there would surely be a record of it. But we need some time to look for records. How about 1 hour? I'll only give you 1 hour. After 1 hour, if you can't give me an answer, then I'll go find it myself. Without waiting for the mayor to finish speaking, Iagr Cousin set a time limit on the spot. Looking at the mobile troops that were temporarily parked at the side of the city, the poor mayor didn't know whether to be happy or worried. 1 hour passed very quickly. When the mayor, who was sweating profusely, hurried over with his subordinates, he saw that the Greys team had already prepared to attack, and the mobile troops parked at the side were the same. However, compared to the Greys team that was facing the desert, the mobile troops seemed to be facing the city intentionally or unintentionally. This discovery made the mayor and the others wipe their sweat. Did Isnario Farid really come to this city? Looking at the document handed over by the mayor, Iagr Cousin frowned. When the truth was so easily placed in front of his eyes, even Iagr Cousin couldn't help but have a trace of doubt. Yes. It's just that Isnario Farid didn't seem to have entered our city. He just passed by the outskirts of our city and entered the desert. The mayor nodded repeatedly, and while speaking, he pointed to the desert behind the city. The desert? It seems that it won't be so easy to catch that damn traitor. Iagr Cousin, who threw the document back to the mayor, ignored the mayor's pleading face, and decisively turned to face the Greys team. "Everyone, The traitor's whereabouts have been determined. We are only one step away from the supreme glory of the glorious era and Lars Horn. Yes, Sir Eager. In the loud voice of his subordinates, Eager Cousin boarded his mech, rushed out of the temporary camp, and entered the desert without looking back. Looking at the billowing sand again, the mayor wanted to cry but had no tears as he watched Eager Cousin and his men enter the desert with only yellow sand. Mayor, should we inform Lars Horn? The subordinate asked. No. No need. Let's take the people away from here. For some reason, looking at the billowing sand in the distance, the mayor suddenly sighed. His subordinates looked at each other, but they still did as they were told. After all, evacuating to a safer city was much better than staying in this small city that had exhausted all its defensive forces. Let's not talk about the fate of this city. Eager Cousin and his men marched in the desert continuously for 3 days, but they could not find any traces of human activity in this desert. Whether it was day or night, all they could find was yellow sand, and the scorching sun and cold moon that were constantly rotating above their heads. The fruitless search made the anger in Eager Cousin's heart burn hotter, more vigorous, and more terrifying. Even when the scorching sun was high in the sky, Eager, who was more and more eager to find his Nario Farid, did not even care how terrifying the scorching hot armor was. He directly stepped on it and carefully searched all the places he could see with his binoculars. But the result was the same. Except for the yellow sand. It was still yellow sand. Their originally high morale was gradually depleted as the endless yellow sand flew into the air. Another day passed. When the incomplete moon rose again, the subordinates, who had already skillfully dealt with the temperature that continued to drop in the desert night, unpacked their bags one after another and prepared to spend the night and make arrangements for duty. Everything looked so normal and calm. However, a sudden change occurred. Rustle, 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 a series of rustling noises were heard. Taking advantage of the opportunity when Eager and the others had just put down their bags and were preparing to spend the night, they suddenly rushed out from under the yellow sand. As the yellow sand scattered all over the sky, a few black shadows rushed to the side where the mobile engineers were, setting off a bloody storm. Ah! Screams accompanied by the strong smell of blood swept over on the spot, stunning Eager and the others on the spot. Quickly return to the body. It's Ma! Broman! There were also capable people among Eager's subordinate. But even so, the mobile engineers had almost lost half of their strength. In less than a minute, the sudden attack had easily crippled the mobile engineer team. Sir Eager, please come closer to us. Eager, who was pushed into the cockpit by his subordinates, had just started the body. From the lit-up screen, he looked at the 2 Greys who had completed the activation first and took the initiative to approach. Pay attention to the surrounding situation. The situation in Eager Kazan's mind had changed, but he would not back down because of this. Since the attack had happened, it meant that the enemy hiding behind the scenes was about to show up. Rustle, rustle, the rustling sound came again. Even the undulating sand dunes that appeared with these strange sounds were locked on by Gray's optical camera. It's the enemy. The enemy is under the sand. Looking at the enemy swimming under the desert, Greys, who had finished approaching Eager Kazan, raised their guns and fired bullets on the undulating sand dunes. But even if the sand area was blown up, the enemy lurking under the sand was not harmed at all. Isnario Farid. I didn't expect that a traitor who only knows how to hide and scheme all day long would be born in the 7-star family. I'm really ashamed of Lars Horn and the 7-star family. Iagal Kazan frowned as he watched his men sniping at the enemy hiding under the sand, but to no avail. He could not help but roar angrily. Oh? I only know how to hide and scheme all day long? Kid from the Kazan family, you're really naive. A burst of sneer suddenly sounded in the communication channel between Greys and Eager Kazan, and others were startled. It must be known that this communication channel was not the mainstream channel used by Lars Horn. This was only the communication channel used by the Greys troops led by Iager Kazan. Such a hidden and confidential communication channel was actually cracked by someone? Humph. Sure enough, you're still wet behind the ears. You're actually scared by a little trick. Ristal Aryan really knows how to choose obedient and stupid puppies. As soon as these words came out, it immediately aroused Iager's anger. Isnario Farid. Don't insult Sir Ristal. Insult? Ha 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 ha. I'm insulting Ristal Aryan? Kid from Kazan. Do you know that this is the truth? Shut up. Come out. You traitor. I'm going to punish you on behalf of Lars Horn. The Greys driven by Iager Kazan turned back and forth, looking around, but could not find any place to hide. Punish? Ah. Interesting. But before that, I want to show you something. As soon as Isnario Farid's voice fell, the screams of Iager's subordinates could be heard. Sir Iager, be careful above your head. Above my head? When Iager subconsciously raised his head, the screen in front of him suddenly turned black. Then, a cold gust of wind blew above his head. Then, a cold touch followed, piercing deeply into Iager Kazan's spine. Come on. Kid from the Kazan family, I wonder what you'll become when you see that your praise for Ristal Aryan is fake. Chapter 738. A huge black shadow shrouded the Reginald, which was piloted by Iager Kazan. Among them, there were looming shadows hanging from the top of the Reginald, covering most of the steel body, making it impossible for Iager Kazan's subordinates to see the situation in the cockpit of the Reginald. No matter how they called out in the communication channel, the Reginald was like a dead object. It did not respond to the calls, nor did it make any movement. From the moment the huge black shadow appeared, the subordinates could only remember the moment when Iager Kazan suddenly became painful. Damn it! Isnario Farid! What did you do to Master Iager? There was no doubt. The huge black shadow was the traitor that Iager Kazan and his men were looking for. The target was here. Iager Kazan, who was leading them, fell into silence. So, under these various factors, the Glaze team launched an operation on the spot. The 120mm rifles in the hands of the Glaze team constantly fired a series of bullets at the huge black shadow, wantonly creating beautiful sparks on the huge black shadow. However, this gorgeous display of sparks made someone hidden behind the scenes feel displeased. A puppy's puppy? Humph! How loyal! Covered by the black shadow, Reginald, who was particularly hazy, suddenly trembled and seemed to move. This surprised the Glaze team, who were jointly besieging the huge black shadow. Master Iager! Master Iager! Are you okay? Master Iager, get away from that strange black shadow! We'll support you! The loyal subordinates called out Iager Kazan's name in the communication channel. The black shadow stirred, and Reginald, who was shrouded by it, slowly raised his hands, clenched his fists as if he was trying to catch something, and then tore it apart forcefully. Rip! The sound of something being torn apart rang in the hearts of the Glaze team's pilots. Reginald, whom they had been calling for, and his pilot, finally broke free from the shadow that was shrouded in darkness. Without hesitation, the Glaze team, who had a tacit understanding in the past, immediately sent 2 Glaze mechs forward, supported Reginald, and tried to take him away from the black shadow. Lord Iager, please hold on. We will be right there. Just as the 2 Glazers were about to support Reginald and retreat, the 2 Glazers suddenly stopped in their track. This puzzled the teammates who were attacking the shadows and providing cover for their retreat. Hey! What the hell are you doing? Why aren't you bringing Lord Iager along? Amidst the flickering flames of the 120mm rifle, the 2 Glazers supporting Reginald Rez trembled slightly and fell to the left and right at almost the same time. Boom! The moment the heavy body fell on the sand dune, Two long and sharp spikes with traces of engine oil at the end appeared in front of the remaining Grez pilots. This was not an attack from the enemy, but from the Reginald, piloted by Iago Cousin, whom they sought to rescue. Clang! The moment the sound of metal vibrating tore through the air, Glaze's pilots clearly saw the two spikes retract into Regan Rez's body. As far as they knew, Regan Rez had never been equipped with such a strange weapon. What's more, as Regan Rez's pilot, Iago Cousin would not have any thoughts about such a strange weapon. Lord Iago! However, no matter what their impression of the past was, and what they saw in front of their eyes, the result was that Reginald Reynolds, who they were supposed to rescue, and even Iago Cousin, had suddenly attacked and killed their subordinates with their own hands. Buzz, buzz, buzz! A strange buzzing sound suddenly rang out and reverberated on the sand dune for a long time. Amidst this strange buzzing sound, the huge shadow that had been acting as the target of Glaze's team quietly retreated, giving the sand dune to Regan Rez, who had become somewhat abnormal. Adlar's Horn soldiers! How can this be? This is Iago Cousin, whom you revere, whom you pledge allegiance to. As the huge shadow retreated, Isnario Farid's voice echoed in the communication channel with a hint of mockery. Shut up, traitor! What did you do to Lord Iago? Stop right now! Among the remaining Glazers, a Glazer suddenly rushed out and raised the 120mm rifle in his hand to attack the huge shadow that was slowly retreating while shouting in grief and indignation. Jed! Lord Iago would never kill Jed. Jed was praised by Master Iago not long ago. He will definitely become the best pilot in Lars Horn. Two, the low roar of the 120mm rifle was like the anger that erupted from the heart of the Grey's pilot. It surged toward the huge shadow like a tidal wave. The momentum was quite shocking. Hidden behind the scenes, Isnario Farid wasn't frightened by this scene. Instead, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. The best pilot? Very good. Then, let your esteemed Iago Cousin test you. A mournful red light flashed from above the sand dune, and a black shadow appeared in front of Gretz, who was charging towards the huge black shadow. Bang! At the same time, the sound of metal being pierced followed closely. A trace of bright red that stung the eyes of the other Grey's pilots slowly flowed out of the hole that was pierced through and quietly mixed with the oil that was rolling down the sand dune. Creak! The change came so quickly. It caught everyone off guard. The two fallen Glazers could still deceive themselves and clear Iago Cousin's name by deceiving themselves. Then, when the scene repeated itself in front of them, where the Glazer who attacked the huge shadow was killed by Regan Gretz, the pilots probably wouldn't be able to clear Iago Cousin's name anymore, right? Bang! Gretz, with a hole in the cockpit, rolled down the sand dune powerlessly, splashing a burst of sand and dust. Looking at the hole covered with sand and dust, the remaining Grey's pilots couldn't help but recall the words that the pilot said before his death to clear Iago Cousin's name. Hypnosis? Control? They didn't know the truth. The only thing they knew was that Regan Gretz and even Iago Cousin might really want to bury them here. Is there anyone left alive from the mobile engineer unit? There were only 2 remaining Glazers left, and the fate of the mobile engineer unit was unknown. However, as soon as they thought about the possibility of being surrounded by the small M.A. Blomans, the remaining 2 Glaze pilots no longer held any hope for the possibility of the mobile engineer unit still being alive. Is this our last battle? After the 2 Glaze pilots looked at each other through the screen, they both showed a determined look. If that's the case, then we will use our lives to awaken our most respected Sir Iago Cousin. Thus, the fire of determination to die was ignited. The 2 Glazers launched a charge from the left and right, raising their weapons and aiming at the target. Under the control of the 2 pilots, the 120mm rifles in the hands of the Glazers spat out flames full of anger and determination, vowing to completely devour the enemy in front of them. But this attack full of determination was not launched at Regan Gretz, but at the huge shadow that was slowly retreating. "So you're still coming to attack me?" As expected, they were still stupid humans. "Iagol cousin, it's your turn." When Isnario Farid saw the two remaining Glaze pilots erupt with a determination to not fear death, he thought that he would be able to see a good show between his superior and his subordinate. But he did not expect that these Glaze pilots would choose to aim their guns at the Black Shadow. Such a boring result made Isnario Farid want to end this farce as soon as possible. Therefore, Regan Gretz, who was deliberately avoided by the two Glazers, moved again. Hum! The strange buzzing sound became deeper and more frightening. The moment the flames from the thrusters became brighter, two spikes grew out of Regan Gretz's palms, and with a wave of Regan Gretz's hands, they went straight for the backs of the two Glazers. Hum! As the low buzzing sound of the Ahab furnace increased its output, the Glazers, who were targeted by Regan Gretz, avoided the attack from behind in time. Looking at the spike that almost buried him, the Glaze pilot no longer had any reaction. "So you're not going to let us go? Lord Iagol." "Joseph, I'll cover you." "No. You go and kill that shadow. Only then can we." The Glazer pilot named Joseph was just about to ask his teammates to take this opportunity to attack the huge shadow, but unexpectedly, he lost sight of Regan Gretz. Moreover, the moment he noticed this scene, a black dot seemed to have appeared in the center of the screen in front of him. This black dot rapidly expanded. In the blink of an eye, this black dot became a spike that pierced the heart of the Glazer pilot named Joseph. "Joseph! Lord Iagol! What the hell are you doing? That's your right-hand man." The expression of the last Glaze pilot was one of despair and helplessness. The comrades that he was familiar with and trusted were actually buried one by his boss that he respected and was loyal to. How could he accept such a scene? That, even if he knew that Iagol Kazan might be controlled. Clang! Under the gaze of the last Glazer pilot, the spikes dripping with bright red slowly retracted. The electronic pupil flashing with a terrible red light appeared in front of his eyes. Regan Gretz, this ominous mech that had buried all his subordinates, finally noticed him. Raise the gun and shoot? When the trigger was pulled, the only sound that came was the empty sound of the empty bullet. Pull out the blade? The last Glazer pilot smiled, and gave up the idea of raising the blade to resist Iagol. "Lord Iagol Kazan, if my sacrifice can remind you of the glory of the Kazan family and Lars Horn, then take it. My life. Our beloved Iagol Kazan." The last Glazer abandoned all his weapons and rushed up with his bare hands. He hugged Regan Gretz and tried to push Regan Gretz away from the huge shadow. Push away as much as possible. Clang! The strange sound of metal piercing through objects sounded, and bright red flowers splashed in Glazer's cockpit. But the pain of tearing his body did not make the last Glazer pilot stop his actions. "Lord Iagol, just watch. This is our life." Clang! He was determined to die, but in the end, he was interrupted by the next spike that completely pierced through the cockpit. Glazer, who had lost his determination to die, fell down with a bang. Regan Gretz, who had pierced through him, stood quietly in place and looked at the huge shadow from afar. Between the two, there were 5 Glazers that had fallen on the sand dune and rolled to the bottom of the sand dune. At this moment, the hot desert wind blew through the sand dune, bringing up bursts of sand that buried Glazer. It became more and more intense, and more covered the sky. When the sand dune regained its clear sky, the sand dune had already changed its appearance. What was left was Regan Gretz, who was still standing there and looking at each other from afar, and the huge shadow that could not be shaken even by the strong sandstorm. Ka! Clang! The sound of a blade being drawn shook the scorching air. Regan Gretz raised the blade in his hand and pointed it at the direction of Lars Horn's headquarters from afar. The next moment, the communication signals from all over the world suddenly became chaotic. Shah Abro's communication with the extreme north was cut off. Eugene, who did not know what was going on, climbed out of the mobile engineer's cockpit and waved his right hand at the Red Lotus steel lion that was stepping on the dark wreckage of M.A. Hammonds from afar. Lars Horn's headquarters had just received an emergency communication from a city in the south of the Mediterranean Sea, but the signal was suddenly cut off, which made the CIC in charge of communication puzzled. Listening to the meaningless noise, Kalta Yetyu, who commanded the Earth Command Unified Fleet to descend to a suitable landing operation, silently looked at the desert south of the Mediterranean Sea. Just now, according to the information fed back by the global surveillance satellite, there seemed to be a battle between two MS in the desert. Although the resolution of the photo was not high, Kalta Yetyu could still tell that both sides of the battle were using Lars Horn's active MS commander. There is an unknown signal hijacking our communication. What? Can you release it? Yes. Put it on the main screen now. The next second, a picture with a yellow sand background appeared on the main screen. And in the center of the picture there was a machine that raised its blade and pointed at a certain direction in the sky. In the name of the head of the seven-star family Kazan family, I, Kazan, will, in the name of supreme righteousness, purge all the corrupt scum that occupy Lars Horn's high position, and bring a revolution in the name of justice to Lars Horn. Chapter 739. Warm sunlight passed through the window and scattered into the clean room. As the curtains fluttered in the breeze, a blond man with a handsome face and a tall figure opened the door of this ward that had been upgraded to a special care level. Other than the exclusive medical staff, only a few people could enter the ward. Seems like you've recovered well, Duke Arian. With vigorous footsteps, the blond man glanced at the middle-aged man who was sitting on the bed and silently looking at the ocean outside the window, and said in a clear voice, "It doesn't matter. This small injury isn't a big deal." The middle-aged man, who was addressed as Duke Allen by the blond man, turned around and glanced at the blond man standing beside the bed before nodding slightly. "Seems like the Farid family is already yours. Makilis Farid, young Duke Farid." Those eyes that seemed to be able to see through one's heart didn't seem to bring any pressure to the blond man. Or perhaps, from the very beginning, the blond man called Makilis Farid didn't care that the other party could see through him. "No, Duke Arian, you're wrong to say that. I only took over this position and all the responsibilities that come with it because I want to clean up the mess left behind by Lars Horn, no Isnario Farid, who has already become the public enemy of humanity." McGillis's calmness made Duke Arian frown. Ever since that incident, he, who had been in a coma due to his serious injuries, had already developed a sense of disconnection from this world. Not only was the ancient doom sacrifice revived, but there was also the unforeseen event of Iago Kazan leaving with his subordinates. Even if he had already woken up, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to find a way out of this unforeseen event. "Makilis." "No, Duke Farid. What's the current situation in the headquarters? Although I already know that Duke Falk has also fallen into a coma due to his serious injuries, what about the other family heads?" Rian. Ristal Rian's words were probably a sign of weakness, right? It didn't matter how isolated this ward was, as long as Duke Adrian wanted to know something, it wouldn't be difficult for him to do so. The reason why he said and did this was probably because of the golden-haired man in front of him, Makilis Farid. Not only did he take advantage of Isnario Farid's rebellion to take control of the Farid family, he even took advantage of Duke Bakaranzan's death to pull the Bakaranzan family onto his chariot. On top of that, there was also the Baduin family, who had already made a marriage agreement with her. Now, Makilis Farid probably had all the power of 3 of the 7 star clans under his control. In that case, Restal Arian's display of weakness was probably just a matter of pushing the boat along with the current. Headquarters. Right now, the affairs of the headquarters will be handled by Duke One and Duke Badu. I, McGillis Farid, will be in charge of consolidating the forces Lars Horn can mobilize in the various economic circles on Earth to form an army capable of resisting the ancient doom sacrifice. As for McGillis paused midway, as if to give Restal time to digest the news. The returned Kalta, Yetyu, has already returned to the Earth's outer orbit command fleet and is preparing to integrate the landing forces of the Earth's outer orbit command fleet in the shortest time possible to cooperate with my plan and wait for an opportunity to launch a counterattack against the ancient doom sacrifice. Kalta Yetyu. Hearing this name, Restal recalled the news of Kalta being captured. Unfortunately, after he was rescued, he didn't have time to meet him before the attack launched by the traitor Isnario Farid interrupted all his plans. Then, after a moment of silence, Restal slowly opened his mouth. What about Iago Kazan? Duke Kazan? Is there any news about him? When Restal asked about Iago Kazan, a light suddenly flashed in McGillis's eyes. Yes. Not long ago, we received news from Iago Kazan, Duke Kazan. With that said, McGillis took out the tablet computer he carried and handed it to Lestal. I'm very sorry. Because the Ancient Doom Sacrifices offensive is too fierce, we and Lars Horn don't have much spare manpower. If Duke Allen wants to take action, I'm afraid he will have to personally call his trusted subordinate. After seeing Lestal take the tablet, McGillis smiled and continued, I'm not sure if you'll be able to use it. Then, Duke Allen, forgive me for taking my leave first. McGillis' departure was not beyond Risdal's expectations. In fact, even if McGillis didn't say anything, Restal would have seen some clues from the medical staff, who came to check the injury. Iago Kazan. This reckless person who left Lars Horn's headquarters with his subordinates without saying a word. The moment the tablet screen lit up, Risdal's thoughts suddenly became like a monstrous wave, constantly rolling up huge waves in his mind, attacking Risdal's rationality. This ignorant person. Perhaps many years ago, on an afternoon with the same warm sun, Restal Arian, who had temporarily escaped from the heavy business of Arianhead's fleet, was strolling in the garden shared by the Seven Stars family when he coincidentally bumped into the father and son. Everything was destined at that moment. Recalling the pair of eyes that always looked at him with admiration and worship, Restal couldn't help but have a trace of doubt. Every sentence was always inseparable from the righteousness promoted by Lars Horn. The righteous child who carried out justice frowned slightly in the man who witnessed the changes in the world. The child who so easily regarded others as the object of his worship, the child who so easily put the so-called righteousness and justice on his mouth, and wishfully asked others to follow his ideas and carry out the righteousness he agreed with, the righteous child, can he really become the patriarch of the Kazan family, one of the Seven Stars family? Restal had a lot of guesses about the answer to this question, but the result was never reached. Until, at this moment, when he was playing the video on the tablet that McGillis personally sent to him, the man who was regarded by many soldiers of Lars Horn as the man who would lead Lars Horn to glory was defeated by reality in the end. He silently watched the video about Iago Kazan, silently opened the communication channel, then silently edited a message and sent it to the Arianhead fleet that was loyal to him. The man who was like a giant pillar of Lars Horn slowly leaned on the bed and fell into a dead silence until the incomplete moon slowly rose. Iago Kazan. Kazan family. Let me take care of it myself. McGillis, who left the hospital, did not return to Lars Horn's headquarters, but came to the command center that was temporarily set up as the Frontline Command Center. Since the first day of the establishment of the Frontline Command Center, all the elites that could be mobilized in the headquarters of Gjallarhorn had been transferred here by Duke Baduin regardless of family background, and they were all under the command of McGillis. Not for anything else, but to be able to establish a force that could stop the ancient Doom's sacrifice in the shortest time possible. As long as people were slightly well-informed, they would have already seen through Duke Badu's thoughts. Although there were signs of the recovery of the ancient Doom's sacrifice, it had already caught Lars Horn, who had been comfortable for 300 years, off guard. Even if enough troops could be gathered in the shortest time possible, it would be difficult to launch a counterattack against the ancient Doom's sacrifice. Is there any news from Abro? Just like the news received by Kelta, the video message from Abro was also received by Lars Horn's headquarters. Unlike the doubts shown by Kelta, when he saw the steel lion that could easily destroy Lars Horn's fleet, McGillis knew that this war full of unstable factors was about to usher in an opportunity to turn things around. No, not yet. Commander, take the initiative to contact Abro. Now, if we have a little more power in our hands, we can take one step closer to victory. After that, McGillis looked to the other side again. There was the command hub that commanded all the fleets gathered in the East Sea of Lars Horn's headquarters. How is our fleet gathering now? Yes, Commander. The fleets that we can currently gather in the designated sea area in a short period of time have completed all temporary formation tasks, and the mothership as the command center has been clarified. Now our fleet is ready to attack at any time. McGillis was very satisfied with this result, because this fleet not only represented Lars Horn's flag flying again at the forefront of the resistance against Doom's sacrifice, but it also represented the reappearance of the myth from 300 years ago. Very good. Then, after transferring my body to the mothership, the entire fleet will turn to Oceania and blow the horn of resistance against Doom's sacrifice for Lars Horn again. Yes. Long live Lars Horn. Perhaps it was intentional, or perhaps it was unintentional. The moment McGillis gave the order, a body appeared on the main screen of the command center, and even on the screens of the entire fleet. A legendary body that had been sleeping for hundreds of years, and no one had been able to wake it up. AWS G01, Gauda's skeleton, Bailai. The legendary body that had once led humans to resist the reign of terror set off by Doom's sacrifice had appeared once again reviving in the current world where the ancient Doom's sacrifice had revived. At this moment, not only was the legend reappearing, but it was also an opportunity for all the Lars Horn soldiers to witness the reappearance of this body and watch the entire process of it slowly being transferred from the port to the mothership of the fleet. Gauda's Bailai. For me, for Lars Horn, it has brought a brand new reform. Right in the middle of this war between humans and the ancient Doom's sacrifice. On the snowfield that had been ravaged by the blizzard, numerous pitch-black killing machines were no longer in their original state. They were lying on the snow-covered wasteland. They no longer had fangs that could exterminate humans, nor did they have terrifying weapons that could tear humans apart in the blink of an eye. There were the broken bodies that remained on this snowfield, and in the center of this snowfield that was filled with countless black wreckage, a steel lion wearing red lotus armor raised its front paw and smashed the sharp head that it was stepping on into pieces. Boring. The holographic image of the white cat, State Zero, appeared on Ray Minkai's right hand. This white cat that had not appeared in public for a long time shook its front paw unhappily. After fighting for so long, it's just a fake. Can't even be counted as a punching bag. Unlucky. What State Zero meant was that when he used the power of the Lambda drive system and was about to cause a ruckus, M.A. Hammonds, who was supposed to be resisting with all his might, and even the Blue Man's army of servants, who were supposed to be fighting a battle to their heart's content, suddenly stopped. Not only was the pitch-black M.A. Hammonds that looked like it could fight a few rounds with State Zero, but it was also slapped to the ground by State Zero. Even the Blue Man army that surrounded it had turned into wooden dummies, allowing State Zero to do whatever he wanted. Such a posture of no resistance made State Zero, who was burning with fighting spirit, suddenly lose the mood. It's just a bait. Looking at the video message sent by Eugene, combined with the situation that Sino had investigated before, Ray Minkai had already understood what was going on with the pitch-black M.A. Hammonds and the Blue Man Army. Perhaps from the beginning Doom Sacrifice's intention was not here, but somewhere else. I didn't expect Isnario Farid to be so generous as to throw this army here as bait. What a big move! If Ray Minkai were to make the decision himself, he would not be willing to make such a decision. Although this MA army did not pose much of a threat to the Longhorn Lion Zero, this was limited to the Longhorn Lion Zero, which was completely out of the norm. Most of the other conventional mecha would probably be in a precarious situation when faced with the attack of this MA army that could exceed thousands. If placed on the battlefield with Lars Horn, it would certainly be a fresh force that could overturn the situation of the battlefield and reverse the outcome of the battle. Bait? Just these lousy things? Even the power of the Lambda drive system can't break through. What kind of army is this? State Zero snorted disdainfully. The Red Lotus Steel Lion's front claws were still grinding the M.A. Hammond's broken head back and forth. Let's go. The next battle is probably about to start. That's good. I haven't stretched my muscles yet. In the White Cat's nagging, the Red Lotus Steel Lion waved its front claws, pushed the wreckage under its feet to the side in disgust, and turned back to meet up with Eugene and Sino. Chapter 740. Colorful flags fluttered and heads surged. The entire street was crowded with people on both sides. The crowded procedures even gave the police force responsible for maintaining order a headache. This was the result of the propaganda after the Battle of the Snowfield, where the Abro officials led by Sher Miao used the Red Lotus Steel Lion to suppress the M.A. army. The destruction of Edmonton had become a foregone conclusion. After 300 years, the people of Abro were once again shrouded in the shadows of the ancient calamity sacrificed. In their moment of despair, they suddenly saw the seemingly endless calamity sacrifice that had walked out of the legends being wantonly slaughtered by a steel lion. The result was imaginable. As the time of the triumphant return of the troops led by the Red Lotus Steel Lion approached, the crowd on both sides of the main road began to become noisy. From a distance, even if the expression of the faces of the crowd could not be seen clearly, it could be seen from the small flags that were still flying in the hands of the crowd that the people gathered on both sides of the street were looking forward to the Steel Lion that suppressed the M.A. army that destroyed Edmonton with its own strength. There are so many people. Miss Lakis. On the main road, on the temporary viewing platform, Gudelia, who had changed into a capable woman's suit, looked at the waves of noisy crowd and could not help but sigh. That's right. It seems that everyone likes State Zero very much. Lakis was still wearing the purple dress. Although it seemed a little out of place with the surrounding crowd, it was impossible to find any fault with it. After all, just Lakis standing there, her beauty and temperament were already the best in the audience, making it impossible for people to ignore her. In contrast, the exceptionally capable Gudelia was more like Lakis's little follower. In fact, it was exactly so. When Ray Minkai and State Zero went to the extreme north, Lakis took the initiative to take over the work of communication between the Iron Flower Regiment and Abro. Through Lakis's strong communication and negotiation skills, the cooperation between the Iron Flower Regiment and Abro was quickly on the right track, and they began to cooperate more deeply. Originally, according to Sher Miao's initial idea, the Iron Flower Regiment was only invited by Abro to cooperate with Abro's newly established armed forces to carry out related training work. But with Lux's help, the Iron Flower Regiment quickly gained recognition from Abro and began to operate in Abro with the special identity of Abro's first independent armored regiment. Even though the Iron Flower Regiment would be restricted in many areas due to their special identity as the first Abro Independent Armored Regiment. But in the long run, An official identity that allowed him to travel freely among the major economic circles was far more appropriate than the identity of the Taihua regiment, which could be subjected to difficulties by the local officials at any time. When Olga received the letter of appointment from Shimiao, he was completely dumbfounded. It was not until he returned to the base that the newly appointed commander of the 1st Abro Independent Armor Regiment gradually came to his senses. Miss Lakis, this is Olga, who had been reading the appointment letter from day to night and from night to morning, finally couldn't take it anymore and went to find Lux. This is the proof of identity for the Iron Flower Regiment to operate within the borders of Abru, no, within the boundaries of Earth. Commander Olga, you have to keep it well. Olga's incredulous expression, as if he was dreaming, made Lux smile. This appointment letter was, in fact, something that had already been finalized. In Rei Minkai and Lux's plan, no matter how terrifying the tusked Lion State Zero and Rei Minkai's combat power were, they still needed to have an official identity. Otherwise, after this ancient sacrificial battle, their ally, Lars Horn, might turn against them and frame the tusked Lion State Zero as another Ma sacrificial. Of course, Rei Minkai was still the same as before. He didn't want to be the scapegoat. Therefore, Olga, the commander of the Iron Flower Regiment, became the lucky one that was pushed onto the stage. I know about this, but is this really a good idea? Miss Lakis. Facing Olga's doubts, Lux bluntly expressed Olga's concerns. Commander Olga, do you think that accepting this appointment letter will cause everyone in the Iron Flower Regiment to leave this big family and go their separate ways, right? Along the way, Lux could see Olga's dedication and attachment to the Iron Flower Regiment. The main purpose of gathering so many orphans and divorcees to create the Iron Flower Regiment was to give them a home. This point would not have any conflict with the letter of appointment at all. Commander Olga, the Iron Flower Regiment is everyone's home, this is undeniable. But people will always grow up. Don't tell me you want the younger members of the Iron Flower Regiment to continue driving the mobile engineer or MS to fight on the battlefield. This question stunned Olga on the spot, and at the same time, it also ended the conversation. Until the whole city was celebrating the triumphant return of the Red Lotus Steel Lion, Olga didn't come to find Lux. Miss Lux, he's here. His Excellency Rei Minkai is back. When the sound of a cannon was heard, Gudelia, who was standing next to Lux, also cried out in surprise. At the end of the main road, at the entrance of the city that everyone was looking at, a huge figure suddenly appeared. Soft mane scattered around the steel head, shining with a golden light like a crown blade. His eyes were narrow and cold, but there was also a flash of cold light in them. Sharp and terrifying claws, with every step it took, it was able to scratch the hard ground of the main road with its sharp claws. It had a huge and mighty body. Red armor like the flames of a red lotus. This was the scene of the Iron Lion slowly entering the city. Every time the Red Lotus Steel Lion passed by an intersection, there would be loud cries of surprise, followed by cheers. Looks like our hero has returned in triumph. When the cheers reached the peak, Shimiao Higashi finally appeared on the viewing platform. Teacher Shimiao, you're here. Seeing the old man who could still maintain a straight posture even though he was old, the surrounding people all showed a respectful expression and greeted Shimiao in unison. I'm here. I don't dare to be late for an important ceremony to welcome a hero. Moreover, even if Sir Rei Minkai can forgive me, Miss Lux probably won't let this old bag of bones go. Shimiao greeted the surrounding people and looked at Lux and Gudelia as he joked. Representative Shimiao, you must be joking. Lakis smiled and didn't take Shimiao's teasing seriously. Even if Shimiao did not come, Rei Minkai and Lux would not find anything wrong. What's more, even if the Abro government wants Rei Minkai to step onto this stage, it won't be an easy task. Miss Lux, I'm very sorry. After this victory ceremony, the Iron Flower Regiment will probably move out again. Is that so? We've already prepared for this. Isn't that so? Representative Sure Meow. For this world, the revival of the ancient disaster ritual was undoubtedly a disaster. But for Ray Minkai and Lux, the mastermind behind the ancient disaster ritual was their real goal. For this reason, Ray Minkai must go against the ancient disaster ritual that was spread all over the world. Of course, no matter how powerful the tusked lion State Zero was, it could only take care of one side of the battlefield. Looking at the world, Ray Minkai's eyes were naturally fixed on a man who should have found the true meaning that he had been searching for a long time, and a woman who might have returned to the fleet. As the ancient disaster ritual's attack became more and more intense, the reconnaissance satellites in geosynchronous orbit became busier and busier. Furthermore, in the environment where they frequently shifted their orbits to investigate the ancient doomed sacrificial army that was active on Earth's surface, the consumption rate of these reconnaissance satellites continued to increase, causing the already stretched Earth's outer orbit command fleet to feel the pressure on their shoulders grow heavier. Commander, the emergency supplies from the Dort satellite cluster have been stored. In order to solve the problem of the excessive consumption of the reconnaissance satellites, Calta did not hesitate to personally contact the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster. Fortunately, the other party did not make things difficult for Calta. Instead, they readily agreed to provide an emergency batch of supplies to solve the urgent needs of the Earth's outer orbit command fleet. Later, after the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster finished processing the relevant matters, more supplies would be sent over. This gave Calta some confidence in the upcoming landing battle. Commander, Abro called. Coincidentally, after the Earth's outer orbit command fleet received the support supplies from the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster, Abro, who had been silent, took the initiative to contact him. This lifted Calta's spirit. Since returning to the Earth's outer orbit command fleet, Calta's mind had been occupied by choices. The situation of the Earth's command fleet was not very good. The troops that could perform landing operations could not do everything. With his best efforts, Calta could only maintain one of the battlefields on Earth and maintain the advantage over the ancient disaster ritual. As for the other battlefields, Calta could not do anything. Connect, put it on the main screen. With thousands of thoughts in his mind, Calta forced himself to quickly adjust his state of mind. The next second, the old face that Calta had already seen appeared on the main screen. However, the other party seemed to deliberately put on an unfamiliar attitude. Goihan. I am Abro's representative, Sure Miao Donghu. Goihan. I am the commander of the Earth's outer orbit command fleet, Calta Yetu. How is Abro doing now? Do you need help from our fleet? No. Abro doesn't need any help. On the contrary, Abro has temporarily eliminated the threat of disaster ritual to us. Now, the purpose of taking the initiative to contact Gjallarhorn is to confirm with you what we, Abro, can do. Sure Meow's words immediately set off a discussion on the bridge. Calta looked around, and his sharp gaze silenced his subordinates who were gossiping. At the same time, he quickly pulled out the reconnaissance satellite above Abro and did a rough scan of Abro's territory. In the end, it caused another round of discussion. There was no battle with ancient disaster ritual in Abro. If it weren't for a reconnaissance satellite passing over Edmonton, the people on the bridge would have suspected that Abro was a traitor like Isnario Farid. Quiet, Calta shouted in a low voice, and after he made his subordinates shut up again, he slowly nodded at the screen. I already know the situation. Now Gjallarhorn's headquarters was organizing a fleet and preparing to carry out a plan to wipe out the MA army that was raging in Oceania. If Abro still has the strength, he might as well take the initiative to contact Lars Horn headquarters. Calta's face was very calm, and he was not as surprised as his subordinates when they saw that there was no trace of ancient disaster ritual in Abro. Perhaps, in her heart, she already had great confidence in the knight who once captured her. Of course, this was undoubtedly contradictory. But Calta just knew that with the knight, Abro's current situation would not suffer a big blow. Now it seemed that for Abro, just losing Edmonton was the luckiest economic circle in the world. Oceania? I understand. Thank you very much for your guidance, Commander Calta. Then, forgive my rudeness, Commander. In the face of Sher Miao's departure, Calta nodded slightly and no longer spoke. It wasn't until the clock turned one full circle that Calta raised his right hand again. Attention all fleet. Immediately begin to execute all matters before the landing battle. Modify the landing battle target. Our Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet will carry out the mission of supporting Oceania. All relevant personnel immediately prepare for everything. Yes, Commander. Yes, Sir Calta. Calta's gaze crossed the busy bridge, passed through the porthole, and fell on the blue planet on the right side of the fleet, and fell on the continent with large clouds floating in the sky. A red lion? It seems that the night's secret is not as simple as what I see. The cannons roared, and missiles soared into the sky, sprinkling smoke on the sea, forming a wall of smoke that covered a large area of the sea. And in this smoke, armored landing ships loaded with mobile engineers broke through the wind and wave. Under the cover of many grays, they rushed to the beach and released all the mobile engineers loaded in their internal cabins. This was the largest fleet assembled by Lars Horn in a short period of time. By the time it reached the Gulf of Carpentaria in the north of Oceania, most of the city named Carpentaria had already fallen. Looking at the citizens fleeing from the burning city, McGillis did not hesitate to issue an order to start the operation immediately. At the same time as the pilot of Gao Das Bailai, he was the first to appear on the front line. In this battle, let the name of Bailai once again resound in human society. Chapter 741. In K-17s loaded with missile clips and large-caliber cannons, under the cover of the first wave of landing troops, rushed to the beach that had been blown up by the battle between human beings and the MA army, which made it look particularly embarrassing. Not only did these armored troops, who had just stepped off the landing ship, rush to the front line at full speed along the route opened by the first wave of landing troops, but they also took advantage of the weakening of the enemy's artillery fire and took the lead to bombard the enemy with barrages. That was the sound of cannon fire. The missiles that soared into the sky one after another became the main theme of the beaches around Carpentaria. The only difference was that the side being attacked would not scream like humans dying tragically. It would only fall into a dead silence after being defeated, or it would erupt with a strong energy explosion, dragging everything around it, enemies and even allies, into the underworld. Attack! Attack! Mobile Engineer Team 1, you are too slow. Follow the advance of Glaze's troops. Team 3, you are too fast. Wait for the landing of the follow-up troops. There were commands from the bridge of the mothership in the communication channel. Judging from the content, what Gallahorn's fleet, which had been hastily put together, could do had exceeded expectations. Whether it was McGillis or Duke Badwin, the expectations of this hastily assembled fleet were focused on being able to contain the ancient disaster that broke out in Oceania in the first place. But judging from the scene, although this temporary fleet had some discordant voices at the beginning of the battle, as the battle progressed, the fleet showed a determination to work together to face the ancient disaster together. This result was undoubtedly good news for McGillis. However, McGillis seemed to have another opinion. There was no other reason. It was when he personally flew Gao de Bailai from the mothership and appeared at the forefront of the landing battlefield under the watchful eyes of the public. After he personally took care of the most difficult nail, all the discordant voices were silenced by Gao de Bailai's blade. Gao de Bailai, the supreme power of the commander and Lars Horn. The cold blade was ruthlessly inserted into the head of the unknown MA that fell at the feet of Gao de Bailey. McGillis looked at Glaze's troops, NK-17, and other mobile engineer troops that charged from the left and right sides of Gao de Bailey, and he could not help but feel a trace of elation in his heart. "Commander!" An unknown MA appeared on the eastern line of the landing field. From the appearance, it is very similar to the MA that was just cut down by Gao de Bailey. At this time, the communication from the mothership pulled McGillis back to reality. "Understood. Now I will rush over. Hold on." When the blade was pulled out, a trace of black and slippery liquid also splashed out from the wound of the unknown MA, and left stains on Gao de Bailey's leg armor. This was an MA that was somewhat similar to MA Hammond's, but in terms of body shape, appearance, and even weapons, it was very different from MA Hammond's. If MA Hammond's was an airframe that took into account firepower, defense, and speed, then this MA that was cut down by Gao de Bailey was probably a specialized type that leaned towards firepower. When it was discovered, Gao de Bailey, who led Glaze's troops to break through the defense line of the MA army, was hit by a beam cannon. If it weren't for McGillis's quick reaction, he would have used the pair of blades equipped by the Gundabei of Force as a temporary shield, and the anti-beam nano-coating on the Gundabei of Force itself. Even if the Gundabei of Force did not withdraw from the battlefield, it would have been greatly affected, causing the morale of Gallowhorn's side to plummet. "Bahrain." McGillis's voice came from Gao de Bailey, who was rushing to the next battlefield, which made the CIC, who was in charge of contacting him, stunned. "Commander, what are you talking about?" The CIC did not dare to neglect and quickly asked. "MA Bahrain. This is the name of the new MA. It turned out that McGillis gave the name to the unknown MA just now." "Yes. Understood." Although they were puzzled as to why McGillis would suddenly give the new enemy a name, the CIC immediately entered the name into Lars Horn's identification system. The battle that lasted for 10 hours not only did not end, it became even more intense. As more citizens, and even the local Lars Horn garrison of Carpentaria were rescued from the burning city, the fleet that was specifically formed to fight against the ancient doom sacrifice also had a better understanding of the enemy that occupied Carpentaria. The beam of light that soared into the sky attracted McGillis's attention. It was the beam cannon that Bahrain fired. "Commander, according to the information provided by the refugees we took in and the local garrison, the enemies are 3 Bahrainis and no less than 1,000 Bloomin servants." "Just 3 Bahrainis?" Gao de Bailey stood on a ruined building and watched Glaze's troops that were besieging MA Bahrain. After the first encounter, Glaze's troops paid a price, but they also gradually saw through the Ma Bahrain's attack pattern. As a result, Gao de Bailey, who rushed all the way here, found that he didn't seem to need to get involved in the battle that MA Bahrain was doomed to die. Yes. In addition, according to the information we have access to, Carpentaria had the experience of resisting the invasion when the Ancient Doom's sacrifice attacked. Although we don't know the general situation, we can be sure that Carpentaria resisted for at least 3 days before our fleet arrived. 3 days. McGillis frowned when he heard the time. If the garrison of Carpentaria was not defeated instantly, then why didn't the local command system send a request for help to Lars Horn headquarters? Yes. After learning of this situation, we immediately set out to find people who knew the situation from the local garrison that was rescued. As a result, we found that Carpentaria had sent a request for help to headquarters the moment the Ancient Doom sacrifice attacked. Unfortunately, neither headquarters nor our fleet received a request for help from Carpentaria. This situation made McGillis have a new guess about the fall of Carpentaria. If Carpentaria had sent out a request for reinforcements at the first moment of the Ancient Doom sacrificers' invasion, but had not received a reply from Gallowhorn's headquarters, then it probably meant that either the Ancient Doom sacrificers who had crawled out of the ashes of history had a new method, or that there was a traitor among the humans like Isnario Farid. However, even if he continued to think about this question, it wouldn't help. Until the ancient doom sacrifice that wreaked havoc in Carpentaria was wiped out, these guesses were only guesses. Then, let's speed up our advance. There were more and more mysteries, but McGillis knew that as long as they attacked the central city of Carpentaria, even if they couldn't solve all the mysteries, they would still be able to find clues to solve the mystery. Thus, Gauda brandished his twin swords again and charged towards the Mazda that was surrounded by Gray's troops. In the blink of an eye, the Gundam pierced through Ma Bahrain's body with a single slash. Soldiers, now that we have control of the landing zone, it's time to launch a new round of attack into the depths of Carpentaria. Follow me. Follow the guidance of the Gundam Bale. Charge. Pulling out his sword, Gao Da's sword didn't even look at the Mazda that was pierced through. He leaped up and charged into the city. Unlike the wide view of the landing field, after entering the city, the surroundings were constantly rising and falling. The tall and short buildings made Bale's field of vision narrower and narrower. Is the space getting smaller? Through the Alea consciousness, McGillis could clearly feel a sense of oppression coming from the surroundings. It wasn't just the oppression of the space being compressed by the buildings, it was also the abnormal feeling of something quickly occupying and controlling the city. Suddenly, an electric shock tore through McGillis's mind. McGillis instinctively controlled Gao Da's sword to slash at the building on the left. Boom! The moment the sword slashed at the building, a black shadow that even the billowing dust couldn't cover appeared in front of McGillis. That's Gray's. Withdrawing his sword, Gao Da's sword quickly retreated. After creating a safe distance, McGillis also saw the true face of the black shadow in the gradually dissipating dust. Gray's? No. That's not Gray's. Even if it had a similar appearance, McGillis was very sure that it wasn't Gray's. Because, the moment the black shadow's true face appeared in front of McGillis, Gao Da's Alea consciousness had already told McGillis that the body in front of him was not Gray's. Compared to Gray's oval head, the unfamiliar body's head was much more pointed and long. The most eye-catching monitor was emitting a flame-like reddish-yellow light. Although the armor on its body was very similar to Gray's, the overall appearance was more inclined to the monotonous and rigid style of the ancient Doom ritual. An ancient Doom ritual imitation of Gray's? McGillis thought of this possibility on the spot, but the attack that followed made McGillis have no time to think about it. The battle axe that broke through the air and attacked the surrounding buildings as if they were nothing. While constantly chopping down dust, it launched a fierce attack on Gao Da's Alea consciousness. McGillis didn't dare to be negligent. From the moment he appeared, the ancient Doom ritual invasion that caused the fall of Carpentaria had made McGillis feel like he couldn't control the overall situation. The attack speed didn't decrease? Gao Da's Alea consciousness relied on its propelling wings to nimbly and quickly dodge the strange Gray's attack. At the same time, McGillis was surprised to find that the strange Gray's strength allowed it to continuously hack the surrounding buildings and chase after Gao Da's Alea consciousness while still maintaining the speed of Gao Da's footstep. "Commander, we're here to support you." While he was dodging, the Gray's troops that were behind Gao Da's Alea consciousness finally arrived. "Attack that Gray's. That's not our ally." In fact, there was no need for McGillis's reminder. Glaze, who was chasing after the Gundam Bale, could tell at a glance that it was an enemy, not an ally. Da-da-da-da-da. Without any explanation, 3 Greys quickly occupied the high ground and locked onto the strange Greys and fired a series of shots. But this rapid and accurate attack didn't hit the strange Greys. Instead, it became a precursor to the strange Greys' retreat. The strange Greys waved its battle axe in the air and unexpectedly cut down more than half of the incoming bullets before it turned around and ran. At the same time, the moment it retreated, it waved its battle axe and destroyed more than half of a building beside it, raising enough smoke and dust to obscure McGillis and the others' vision. "Don't chase. Be careful of an ambush." McGillis immediately stopped his subordinates who wanted to chase. "Commander, who was that graze just now?" "No. I don't know either. But the only thing that's clear is that it's an enemy. Whether it's a human or in Doom ritual, that body that looks like Gray's will only be our enemy." Yes. This Battle of Carpentaria was probably not as simple as Lars Horn thought. On the other side of the ocean, at an airport in Abro, a long-distance transport aircraft was making its final preparations for takeoff. "Steady. Steady. Continue to retreat." "Yes. That's right. Continue to retreat." A heavy transport vehicle slowly pushed a shelf wrapped in canvas along the landing gear into the open cabin of the aircraft. The youths around it carefully watched the movements of the transport vehicle so that they could give timely warnings. "Kai, is it enough to only bring Mitsuyuki and Barbados?" On the observation deck, Lakis stretched out her hand and stroked her hair that was messed up by the breeze as she asked softly. "Yes, it's enough. Actually, if it were possible, I would prefer to only bring State Zero to Carpentaria. But unfortunately, Olga's side is too stubborn." Ray Minkai sighed and turned to look at Lakis. "Commander, Olga is just worried about your safety. From the news from Carpentaria, Lars Horn's attack seems to have been blocked outside the city center for a few days. No matter how Lars Horn's Joint Fleet attacks, it seems like they can't break into the city center." While gradually gaining the recognition and trust of Abro's officials, Lakis could already come into contact with most of Abro's affairs. Because of that, Lakis could not immediately move together with Ray Minkai. "That's only temporary. You must know that Kalta issue has been in the sky for a long time. I believe that by the time I reach Carpentaria, there will be a meteor shower in Carpentaria's sky." Chapter 742. The momentum of Lars Horn's successful landing was ultimately suppressed by the ancient Doom sacrifice. Originally, in the original plan, the Gjallarhorn mixed fleet led by McGillis wanted to take advantage of the successful landing battle to recapture the periphery of Carpentaria and establish an outpost base at the same time. However, this plan was thwarted by the sudden and fierce counterattack of the ancient Doom sacrifice. While McGillis frowned, it also caused the high morale of the Lars Horn mixed fleet to suffer a setback. However, this setback only lasted for a moment. McGillis only muttered to himself for a moment before letting it go. If the ancient Doom sacrifice that revived from history was so easy to deal with, humanity wouldn't have almost gone extinct. It wasn't until a quarter of the human population was wiped out by the ancient Doom sacrifice and Lars Horn was established to become the leader of humanity against the ancient Doom sacrifice that the situation began to turn around. If it wasn't for that, how could the Gao de Bailai he was piloting be regarded as the symbol of supreme power? "Commander." Squads 3, 5, 9, and 13 encountered the strange Greys that fought with Commander earlier in A1 and C3 respectively. The news from the front line from the mothership made McGillis slightly focused. Casualties? McGillis had a deep understanding of the strength of the strange Greys. If it weren't for his Gundabei of Force and Alea sense being sufficiently powerful, McGillis would have been suppressed by the freakish Glaze in a single exchange of blows. He might have even been defeated in a single exchange of blows. Yes, Squad 3 lost to Graze. Squads 5 and 9 didn't suffer any losses because they encountered the enemy in a joint search. But Squad 13 was completely wiped out. Completely wiped out? The final answer was not out of McGillis's expectations. Temporarily slow down the attack and establish an outpost in the area we control. Pay attention to the enemy's movements. Yes, understood. After sending out a series of orders to postpone the attack, McGillis disconnected from Gao de Bayeri. After the Alea system was disconnected, MacGillis walked out of Gau de Barry's cockpit and looked at the sea occupied by his and Lars Horn's fleet. Above the steel warships built by the humans was the moon hanging high in the night sky. Looking at the faint moonlight scattered on the surface of the sea, MacGillis suddenly had the misconception that on the day of the doomed sacrifice 300 years ago, Agunica Cairo had also thrown herself into the battlefield under the illumination of the moon in the sky. There's still plenty of time. Am I right? Agunica Cairo. At the same time, under the night sky, there was a large transport plane that took off from Abro, crossed several time zones, and finally entered the airspace near Oceania when the full moon hung over Carpentaria. With surging power, the engine of the large transport plane, which was loaded with fully armed MS missiles, could not be completely blocked out even by soundproof headphones. However, these sounds that had been suppressed to the minimum did not have much impact on the three suns and moons. For him, sitting in the cabin of a large transport plane that traversed half of the globe, waiting for the moment of landing with his own plane, Barbados, was just a slightly special daily meal. The most obvious difference was that the Mars dates that the three suns and moons used to eat as snacks were replaced with high-calorie chocolate. This was what Ray Minkai asked the logistics staff to prepare for the three suns and moons before departure. Maybe this was Ray Minkai's bad taste on the spur of the moment. Now that the world had undergone great changes, the Iron Flower Regiment had lost the opportunity to continue to be involved with MacGillis. Under the operation of Ray Minkai and Lakis, the Iron Flower Regiment, in addition to the identity of the Mars Civil Guard Company, also had the official identity of the first independent armored regiment recognized by the Abro officials. In this way, not only did the Iron Flower Regiment not have to worry about Lars Horn's investigation, it was more likely to openly use the regular interplanetary routes to strengthen the connection between Mars and Earth. Of course, this was a story for another day. Ta-ta, when the sound of boots stepping on the iron plate was heard, the three suns and moons stopped peeling the chocolate wrapper and looked to the side. Sir, do you want it? The three suns and moons looked at the person and nodded slightly, then handed over the chocolate that had already been peeled off the wrapper. No. You can have it, three suns and moons. I still have a lot here. Come and get more when you're done. The person waved his hand, then turned to the container next to him, indicating that there were more chocolates inside. Are we going to throw these things down with us? The three suns and moons looked at the containers and seemed to be a little confused. The three suns and moons knew what to do next. The large transport aircraft's mission was to transport Ray Minkai, State Zero, the three suns and moons, as well as Gouda and Barbados across half of the Earth to the airspace of Carpentaria to assist Lars Horn's attack. The three suns and moons were not very clear about the situation at the front line. However, he vaguely guessed that there was not enough space for the big guy to land steadily around Carpentaria. Yes. It's just that these things will only be dropped on the beach controlled by Lars Horn's combined fleet after we land. Ray Minkai nodded and explained the next plan. The three suns and moons listened to Ray Minkai in silence, then asked, "Although I don't really understand, we just have to kill those guys called Doom Sacrificial?" "Yes. Just kill them all." Outside the porthole, spots of light could be seen on the pitch-black land. Those were not the lights of human activities, nor were they the lights of the city at night. Instead, they were the lights of death that symbolized the meaningless depletion of life. Beep beep, the lights on the cabin wall flickered back and forth a few times, then the captain's voice came from the earpiece. "Sir Ray Minkai, three suns and moons August. We are now half an hour away from Carpentaria. Please prepare for the airborne landing. When the time comes, we will do the airborne landing as close to the city center of Carpentaria as possible. However, please do not have too high of an expectation." After a pause, the captain's voice seemed to have a hint of a bitter smile. "After all, we are not sure if there will be enemies like M.A. Hammonds in the city center of Carpentaria. Roger that. We have no problems with the mission here. Please do the airborne landing, while ensuring your own safety. After we disembark, we will approach our allies on our own. Please do not worry. There was nothing wrong with the captain's choice. Ray Minkai also understood the captain's decision. After all, only MS and battleships were qualified to use the nano anti-beam coating. Reconnaissance aircraft, transport aircraft, and even the mobile engineers on the ground to assist MS troops were not qualified to use it. Therefore, under uncertain circumstances, the large transport aircraft did not dare to take the risk of being shot down by MA's nano anti-beam cannons and fly into the city center of Carpinteria. Has it begun? 3 Suns and Moons shook his head, shook off the heavy soundproof earpiece, and looked at Gao de Barbados, who was wrapped in a canvas. It has begun. 3 Suns and Moons, go and get ready. Roger that. In the night sky, the large transport aircraft soaring high in the sky finally began to descend after traversing more than half of the Earth. Facing the fading night and the rising dawn, it flew towards Carpinteria below. At the same time, Lars and Horn's mixed fleet that was constantly monitoring the airspace above Carpinteria also noticed the large transport aircraft that had suddenly entered the battlefield. Commander! The reinforcements sent by Abro have arrived above Carpinteria and are carrying out airborne operations according to the plan. McGillis, who heard the news, suddenly opened his eyes. Through the open cockpit door, he looked at the sky above Carpinteria and saw the large transport aircraft that was entering the best route. Of course, the humans were not the only ones who noticed the large transport aircraft. As the ancient doomed sacrifice that continued to firmly control the city of Carpinteria, it also immediately noticed the large transport aircraft that descended from the sky. Even though this lone large transport plane didn't seem to be a threat, it didn't seem to pose much of a threat. However, the AI army that faithfully carried out the defense strategy immediately mobilized forces and tried to intercept this large transport aircraft. We have been locked on. Mr. Ray Minkai. We can only send you here. Now begin the airborne descent. The captain, who controlled the descending altitude of the transport aircraft, looked at the countless red lights that suddenly lit up the dark city below, and quickly shouted, "Roger that. We are ready. Release Barbados first." As soon as Ray Minkai responded, the captain immediately opened the cockpit door and began the airborne operation. In an instant, the entire cockpit was filled with the cold wind that poured in from the open cockpit door. TSK, this feeling. It's so strong. Although the cold wind that poured into the cockpit was like a knife raging madly, State Zero sat on the container and watched as Ray Minkai flipped the switch and sent Gao de Barbados out of the cockpit. Walala! The moment the pulley block swept across the floor, Gao de Barbados slid out of the cockpit and fell toward the city below. The moment the large transport aircraft lost the heavy weight of Gao de Barbados, it could not help but jolt. Good. Hold on. Mr. Ray Minkai, please land as soon as possible. More and more monsters are paying attention to us below. The captain, who was trying his best to control the transport aircraft, continued to shout loudly and told Ray Minkai what he saw. In fact, even if the captain did not say it, Ray Minkai had already seen the scene below from the opened cockpit door. However, the swaying and densely packed red dots were no longer located in the cold extreme north, but in the big city at the southern end of the equator. This is Ray Minkai calling the crew. Starting the airborne operation. Thank you for sending us all the way. Roger that. This is what we should do. After landing, help us out too. Roger that. Over. The moment he took off the earphones and threw them to the corner, State Zero ran up to Ray Minkai's shoulder against the cold wind. That was the throne it sat on when it was in the form of a white cat. Kai. Let's begin. Okay. Facing the cold wind, Ray Minkai, who was not wearing any landing equipment, opened his arms and jumped down while staring at the dark city below. In the next second, a beam of light split the darkness and shot out from the deepest part of the dark city, heading straight for the transport aircraft that was about to turn and leave Carpinteria. It was an attack. The situation that the captain of the transport aircraft was worried about had happened. The blazing beam of light tugged at the strings of the night and burst out a deafening buzzing sound, attracting the attention of all the creatures that were not asleep to the blazing and terrifying beam of light. Quick, quick, leave this place. The cockpit was not completely closed. The turn was not completed. A worrying attack followed closely. The transport aircraft was almost unable to avoid it. At this moment, it was as if doomsday had arrived for the transport aircraft and its crew. At this moment, the captain suddenly had an illusion of relief. Fortunately, the mission was completed just a moment ago. Rumble! The terrifying energy flow traversed the night sky and swallowed the transport aircraft completely. No! The beam of light that tore through the night sky did not hit the transport aircraft. The moment before it was about to hit the transport aircraft, it was blocked by something unknown. From the porthole on the right, the captain could see that the light of death was so dazzling and terrifying. But under the cover of this terrifying light of death, the transport aircraft that should have been destroyed in the air was lucky enough to escape from the shadow of death and quickly rose higher into the sky. That's a lion? All of a sudden, the co-pilot exclaimed. Lion, it's him? The beam of light that tore through the night sky disappeared quietly, unable to stop the transport aircraft that was flying higher and higher. In the night sky, only the lion that suddenly appeared and blocked the beam of light was left. In the night sky where the moonlight was like a veil and there was still a hint of energy reaction, a steel lion with snow-white armor, black translucent goggles, mane as sharp as blades, limbs with conspicuous red joints slowly moving, and carrying two uniquely shaped blades on its back, was stepping on stairs condensed from faint light, one step at a time as it stepped into the dark city invaded by the ancient doom ritual. Below it was the swaying, flickering red light and the black servant army that was constantly surging. And behind these servant army, in the depths of the dark city, was the mastermind behind the beam cannon that almost killed the transport aircraft on the spot. The pure white lion descended from the night sky and stepped onto the roof of the tallest building within 1,000 meters. Looking down, it raised its head and roared. Chapter 743. Under the night sky, the scene of the white lion descending onto Carpinteria was witnessed by all the Lars and Horn soldiers who had yet to fall asleep. And Machilus was one of them. Furthermore, he woke up faster than the other people who were shocked by the scene caused by the snow-white lion. Bridge. Attack. It's time to reclaim the periphery of Carpinteria. This was an opportunity. A greeting gift from Ray Minkai. A greeting gift from afar? That's not simple. Night. From the beginning to the end, Machilus never took the initiative to contact Ray Minkai, nor did he receive any communication from Ray Minkai. Both sides seemed to be in a state of high tacit understanding. They both believed that the other could see through their thoughts and cooperate accordingly. And now, with the white lion stepping into Carpinteria from the sky in such a high-profile manner, it undoubtedly provided the best cover for Lars and Horn's next attack. At McGillis's order, the mothership of the mixed fleet issued an attack order that had been arranged in advance, fully activating the Gjallarhorn mixed fleet that had gathered here. In the blink of an eye, the siren that signified the start of the battle resounded throughout the Gulf of Carpinteria. As searchlights lit up one after another, Glaze's troops, whose armor still had traces of the battle during the day, and the mobile engineer troops activated one after another. They charged into the Dark City according to their assigned mission. At the same time, the fleet stationed in the Gulf of Carpinteria also launched a new round of firepower support. Thanks to the appearance of the transport plane, the central area that they had been unable to explore during the day finally revealed a corner of the veil. No matter what else was hidden in the central area of Carpentaria, the mixed fleet of Lars and Horn knew one fact. There was at least one MA that was suspected to be similar to the MA Hammonds. Such a high-value target was definitely worth the fleet's expenditure of ammunition to suppress it in the city center, preventing it from rushing out of Carpentaria and hindering the next attack. The cannons roared, and a series of flames lit up the dark city, plunging it into a new round of fire. And amidst the splashes of flames, missiles with long tails of flames flew across the sky, covering the city center where the MA might be hiding. Rumble, rumble. The explosion of the cannons. The whine of the missiles tearing through the night sky. It actually suppressed the roar of the White Lion. This made State Zero shake his head in displeasure. These bastards, they really know how to loot a burning house. State Zero turned around and bared his sharp teeth at the defense line where the mixed fleet was located. Then, he jumped again and charged into the dense crowd of Blumann's servants from the top of the building. Roar. 1. The roar. The blade vibrated, and the sound of the enemy's body was like thunder, wave after wave, without stopping. Looking down from the sky, the swaying black wave with red spots of light was being split apart by a snow-white arrow. It did not stop the advance of the black wave at all. It could only use its body to block the footsteps of the White Lion as it charged towards the city center of Carpentaria. Golden sharp teeth. Golden sharp claws. The two long swords on its back. Even the hair on its head was like a blade. It turned the rapidly charging snow-white lion into a terrifying killing machine. As long as it was an enemy that blocked the White Lion's advance, it would always be bitten, torn, or even stomped to death in various ways. The seemingly terrifying number of Blumann's army, which filled every corner of the city, was actually so fragile. That lion, it's so powerful, taking advantage of the gap between the fleet's firepower support, the reconnaissance aircraft that was waiting for an opportunity to take off also came to the area where the White Lion was. It naturally saw the White Lion as if it was playing, easily breaking through the blockade of Blumann's army, and went straight to the city center. Hawkeye 1. Report the information you saw. At this moment, McGillis's voice was transmitted to the reconnaissance aircraft that was watching the White Lion. Yes. Reporting to the commander. The lion that suddenly landed in Carpentaria has broken through the enemy's defense line and is getting closer and closer to the city center. I believe that it won't be long before the lion comes into contact with the enemy's main force. McGillis's voice made the pilot of the reconnaissance aircraft very excited. Is that so? Thank you for your hard work. Please pay attention to your safety. Don't get too close to the city center. McGillis could hear the pilot's excitement, but he did not dwell on it too much. Compared to the loyal subordinates of the Yethu family and the Kuzan family, the soldiers under McGillis's command were already considered normal. McGillis's gaze moved and fell on the street that was constantly lit up by explosions. That was the place where the White Lion was breaking through the defense line. With such a high-profile and arrogant action, the steel lion that was stepping in the air would soon become the focus of this battlefield. Boom! Boom! The huge parachute was thrown down, and the perfectly landing Gao de Barbados immediately raised the folding smoothbore cannon on his right arm and fired at the incoming Blumann's servant army. In the roaring cannon fire, a dazzling spark suddenly exploded among the Blumann's servant army, bringing up countless pieces of debris. Buzz. Then, Gao de Barbados lowered his body and fully unleashed the thrust of the thruster on his back. With this explosive force, he charged like lightning to the front of the enemy that was disrupted by the cannon fire. He repeatedly waved the hammer sword in his left hand and swept back and forth among the Blumann's servant army like he was harvesting wheat. Bang! 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 The sound of the hammer sword hitting the black Blumann's body was endless, like the sound of heavy drums alternating with each other. Every time there was an explosion, one or two Blummans would be sent flying. At first glance, Gaudababado's attack was indeed powerful, but the number of Blumman's servant army blocking it was too shocking. Even if Gaudababados could destroy a few blue men with each attack, it was only a small part of the huge number of blue men. It didn't have any effect at all. As long as Gaudababados continued to tangle with the black blue men that were surging like a flood, Gaudababados and 3 suns and moons might be exhausted to death. TSK. There are too many of them. 3 suns and moons saw through this and frowned slightly. Then, he piloted Gaudababados to quickly retreat, trying to increase the distance between them and the Blumman's servant army in the shortest amount of time. Boom! Boom! While retreating quickly, Gaudababados continued to raise the folding smoothbore in his right hand under 3 suns and moons' control and fired a few rounds at the buildings on the left and right side. As the shells exploded, the buildings that were hit fell to the side, causing smoke and dust to cover the entire street temporarily. It also temporarily stopped the Blumman's servant army that was chasing Gaudababados, turning around, jumping, and leaving quickly. This set of actions was done in one go without any hesitation. At the same time, as 3 suns and moons piloted Gaudababados to break away from the pursuit, they were also constantly looking for traces of the snow-white lion. According to the plan that the 2 of them had made before landing, there should be a rendezvous point north of Gaudababados' current position. As long as they reached there and sent out a signal flare, Ray Minkai and State Zero would rush over to rendezvous, break through the enemy's blockade, and rush into the city center. Your Excellency, have we arrived? While jumping, Gaudababados landed on the roof of a 15-story building and was searching the surroundings. As expected, the street leading to the center of the city had become the most eye-catching area of the entire battlefield. Black Blue Man's servant army, White Ma Bahrain, the 2 joined forces and tried to stop the Snow-White Lion's advance. Buzz! Buzz! The blazing beam of light pierced through the building from the southeast to the west and went straight behind the Snow-White Lion, trying to skewer the Snow-White Lion from the back to the front, killing it without caring about burying it. Roar! The Snow-White Lion that was enraged by the sneak attack roared again and again. After slapping the surrounding Blue Man servants away, it actually used the surrounding buildings as footholds to avoid the beam of light and rushed to the sky above Ma Bahrain, who had ambushed it. Then, it was a claw technique that fell from the sky. A sharp claw that burst out with a cold light pierced into Ma Bahrain's head without any hindrance and went straight for the reaction furnace below his head. This set of actions was done in one go, as fast as lightning, and did not give Ma Bahrain any time to breathe. Poor Ma Bahrain had just shot out that beam of light when it was slapped by the Snow-White Lion. Boom! The huge explosion drowned more than half of the street. Whether it was the Snow-White Lion or the Black Blue Man, they could not escape being drowned by the terrifying explosion caused by Ma Bahrain's suicide. At this moment, the buildings in the center of the explosion collapsed and the streets collapsed. Even the area a few streets away could not escape the destruction of the terrifying shockwave caused by this explosion. The glass shattered everywhere, the street lamps were instantly uprooted, the concrete paved road collapsed and scattered. Above that miserable state, a huge mushroom cloud appeared in the sky. This scene made Lars Horn's troops, who were finally able to rush into the outer city and begin to sweep the enemy, dumbfounded. This was a terrifying scene that rarely happened since the Calamity sacrifice. After the destruction of the human enemy AI army, Lars Horn, who had the top combat strength of the human race, had not encountered an enemy worthy of fighting with all his strength for a long time. Therefore, the shockwave that destroyed several blocks in an instant had fiercely refreshed the understanding of war of the current generation of Gjallarhorn pilot. Roar! Under the huge mushroom cloud, a roar shook the sky, as if announcing its victory, constantly stirring the rolling mushroom cloud. The roar of victory shook the sky, but it did not scare the enemy away. Above the wreckage covered in smoke and dust, a cold red light once again lit up. It was the Black Blooman's servant army. This mechanical army, who did not know whether they were alive or dead, treated the corpse as nothing and continued to trample on the wreckage that was full of bomb craters, swarming forward. Once again, from all directions, the snow-white lion, who was in the center of the explosion, was unscathed. Under the black wave, the snow-white lion, who was stepping on Ma Barain's broken head, showed a trace of human-like disdain in its eyes. It seemed to be very disdainful of the enemies that came from all directions and surrounded it with an inescapable net. Roar! The heavy low roar was a unified attack launched by the black wave. In a one-on-one battle, the large-caliber assault cannon equipped by Blue Man could not hurt the long-toothed lion at all. But now, there were at least hundreds of Blooman's servant army surging forward like a tide. Their cannonballs almost covered the sky above the snow-white lion, as well as the range of movement that it could move. In the blink of an eye, the thunderous cannonballs and flames had already cut off the mushroom cloud. The momentum was extremely terrifying. Looking at the world, there was probably no no pilot with enough performance and ability to escape from this terrifying barrage, right? But the long-toothed lion and Ray Minkai were not afraid of this barrage that almost destroyed all life. Roar! The snow-white lion raised its right front paw, and the power of the Lambda drive system was instantly activated. The unknown force field, which was enough to block all physical phenomena, once again enveloped the snow-white lion, guarding the last checkpoint, allowing the monstrous barrage to pour down on the snow-white lion. At this moment, the shock wave between heaven and earth had not subsided, and the terrifying barrage of the Blooman's servant army followed one after another, resounding in the sky above Carpentaria. Lars Horn's troops, who had just escaped the shock wave, once again focused their attention on the area where the earth-shattering explosion had just erupted, followed by such a terrifying attack. However, just as their gazes landed on that area, a burst of dazzling light suddenly erupted, overshadowing the momentum created by the rumbling cannon fire that was like rolling thunder. The light that was like the rising sun disappeared in a flash, and the world fell into a dead silence. Then, the rumbling sound was louder, more roaring, and more shocking than the previous rumbling cannonballs, igniting the world. Rumble, this terrifying commotion, which sounded like thunder from the 9 heavens, was the shocking commotion caused by the explosion of all of Blooman's servants who had just created an inescapable net by firing in unison and swore to kill the snow-white lion. Perhaps in this battlefield, no one had ever imagined that such a scene would occur. In just a short moment, the hundreds of Blooman's servant army were destroyed at the same time, without a second's difference. The culprit that caused such a terrifying scene was the snow-white lion that stood proudly above the burning sea of fire using the Blooman's servant army as fuel. Above the burning steel wreckage was M.A. Hammonds that had appeared out of nowhere. No. Although the outline of the body was very similar to the M.A. Hammonds that Ray Minkai was familiar with, in terms of size and details, the enemy that appeared in front of him was far bigger than M.A. Hammonds, and also seemed to be more oppressive. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.